What do you do when your family excludes you from a trip they promised, only to rub it in with photos? Stella had spent months planning what should have been a family trip, the kind she believed would bring her closer to the people she loved. But instead, her parents decided to postpone it, and she was left behind. Days later, the truth came crashing down as she scrolled through Facebook. Her family went without her. Stay tuned to see how Stella confronts her family's betrayal and stands up for herself. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories. I grew up in a small town, in a modest 2-story house with my parents and my older sister Gemma. She was only 2 years older, but it often felt like we lived in entirely different worlds. My father owned a small cafe that brought in just enough to keep us comfortable, while my mom stayed home and helped out occasionally. It wasn't a life of luxury, but it worked. For most of us, it was enough. Gemma, sweetheart, that presentation was absolutely brilliant. I still remember Mom saying one evening after a school event, "You're going to go so far in life, you're just so talented." I stood in the doorway clutching my own certificate from the science fair, but no one seemed to notice. It was always like that: Gemma, the star, and me, the shadow. That was the pattern of my childhood. Gemma got the latest iPhone while I inherited her old one with the cracked screen. She wore designer clothes while I wore her hand-me-downs. Every family gathering was a showcase for Gemma's achievements. "Did you hear about Gemma's SAT scores?" Dad would proudly announce to the relatives. "Top percentile, and she's president of the debate club too." I learned to fade into the background during these conversations, knowing my straight B's and position as treasurer of the environmental club wouldn't even be mentioned. It wasn't that I was failing, I was doing fine. But in our house, fine might as well have been failure. "Stella," Mom said one day while I helped her fold laundry, "you should really think about practical career options. Maybe something in retail or service. There's nothing wrong with honest work." The words stung, but I had grown used to them, the constant reminders of my supposed limitations. What I hadn't gotten used to, though, was the way they seemed to actively work to reinforce them. Looking back now, I see how those early years laid the foundation for everything that followed: the constant comparisons, the subtle put-downs, the clear message that I was somehow less than my sister. All of it left marks that would take years to heal. But sometimes, the deepest wounds become the strongest motivations, and my family had no idea how their treatment would eventually shape all our futures. I'll never forget the day Gemma got her college acceptance letter. The whole house erupted in celebration. Mom made her favorite dinner, Dad brought home an expensive bottle of wine, and they spent the entire evening making plans for her future. "Our brilliant girl is going to one of the best colleges in the city." Mom couldn't stop grinning. "We've been saving for this moment since you were born, sweetheart." I sat quietly at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, trying to imagine what my own celebration might be like in 2 years. I should have known better. When my turn came, the response couldn't have been more different. I had worked hard to maintain good grades, joined clubs, even taken extra courses to boost my college applications, but none of that seemed to matter. "College?" Mom's laugh was sharp and dismissive when I brought up the subject. "Stella, be realistic. We just can't afford to send you to college. Besides, you're not really college material." "But what about all the money you saved for Gemma?" I asked, my voice shaking. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That was different. Gemma had a clear path, exceptional grades. Well, you're more suited for practical work. Speaking of which, I could use another waitress at the cafe." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I could work while studying," I pleaded. "Please, just help me get started. We could borrow from relatives or take out a loan. I'll pay back every penny with interest. I'll even get it in writing with a lawyer." "We never borrow from anyone in principle," Mom said coldly. "We don't borrow money, and we're not going to change our principles for you. You need to accept your limitations and find a suitable job." I spent that night crying in my room, but by morning, determination had replaced my tears. I went to the only people who had ever truly seen me, my grandparents. "Grandpa, Grandma, I need your help." I explained everything through tears at their kitchen table. "I can't just give up on college. I can't." Grandpa's eyes were filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. We don't have savings, sweetheart, but let me see what I can do. No grandchild of mine is going to have their dreams crushed like this. The next few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. First, the disappointment of the bank rejecting the loan application. Then, the shocking moment when Grandpa announced he was selling their old country house and the plot of land it sat on. The sale of the property provided exactly enough for my college tuition. I applied to study investment management in a city far from home, as far as I could get from the constant reminders of my family's lack of faith in me. The day I left, Mom and Dad didn't even come to say goodbye. Only my grandparents stood at the bus station, Grandma hugging me tight while Grandpa wiped away what he tried to pretend weren't tears. From that day forward, I cut ties with my parents completely. When breaks came and I had to return to town, I stayed with my grandparents in their now smaller house. Their sacrifice meant everything to me, and every time I walked into their modest home, I was reminded of what real family support looked like. After 4 years of relentless work, I finally graduated with my degree in investment management. I returned to my hometown, diploma in hand and dreams bigger than ever, only to have reality hit like a freight train. The job market wasn't exactly welcoming to new graduates, and after weeks of sending out applications, I was met with nothing but silence. Eventually, I landed a job at a small trading company. It wasn't the prestigious investment firm I had envisioned, but it was a start. I found a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. Paid for with my own money. Then came the call I never saw coming. "Stella?" Gemma's voice was as sweet as honey on the other end of the line. "It's been ages. You should come over for dinner this weekend. I'd love to catch up." Something in her tone should have sounded an alarm, but I ignored it. Maybe time had changed things. Maybe we could finally have a real relationship as adults. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I walked into Gemma's house that evening, it took less than a second to realize I had walked straight into a trap. My parents were already there, sitting with Gemma's boyfriend, a slick guy in an expensive suit who barely even glanced at me. The interrogation began as soon as we sat down to eat. "So, Stella," Mom said, her fork hovering mid-air, "tell us about this job of yours." I kept my voice steady, forcing a smile. "I'm working at a trading company. It's small, but—" Gemma cut me off with a laugh. "A trading company? You mean like one of those discount stores? Honestly, you didn't need a college degree for that. Anyone could just walk in and get that job." I felt the heat of humiliation flood my cheeks, but I held my ground. "Unlike Gemma," Mom beamed, "who's a manager at Citibank, and Trevor here is a lawyer with Anderson and Pierce." Trevor, the smug boyfriend, nodded with a self-satisfied grin. "Top law firm in the state." "I told you college wasn't necessary for you, dear," Mom sighed, the words dripping with condescension. "Such a waste of your grandfather's property." Dad chuckled, swirling his wine glass like he was trying to amuse himself. "Hey, my offer still stands. I could use an educated waitress at the cafe. Think how impressed the customers would be. Would you like fries with that from someone with a college degree?" They all laughed. Everyone, except me. I stared at my plate, pushing the food around like I had done so many times as a child, trying to shrink into myself. "Where did you say you're living now?" Gemma asked, though I hadn't mentioned it yet. "I found a place on Cedar Street," I said quietly, not meeting anyone's eyes. The table erupted in exaggerated gasps. "Cedar Street?" Gemma's eyes widened, pretending to be concerned. "Oh, Stella, that's literally the worst neighborhood in the city. Only—" She paused, letting the words sink in. "Well, you know, people who can't afford better live there." "Beggars," Mom stage whispered, and they all burst into laughter again. Something inside me snapped. After all these years of distance, nothing had changed. They were still the same cruel, judgmental people they'd always been. I stood up so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You know what?" I spat, fury lacing my voice. "I'd rather be a beggar than be like any of you." I took a deep breath, each word hitting harder than the last. At least I got where I am on my own without riding on someone else's coattails or living off Daddy's money. I grabbed my purse, not sparing them another glance, and stormed toward the door. Their protests and accusations followed me, but I didn't stop. I was done. As I walked out into the night, I promised myself it would be the last time I ever set foot in their presence. Life has a funny way of surprising you. Just when you think you've hit a dead end, I was still working at the small trading company, doing my best, but feeling stuck when my phone rang one afternoon. It was Laura, my old college roommate. "Stella, you're not going to believe this!" She was practically shouting with excitement. "Remember how we always talked about working for Maxwell Investment Group? They're opening an office in your city and they're looking for fresh talent. I already put in a good word for you." My heart started racing. Maxwell was one of the biggest names in investment management. I spent that night updating my resume and the next week preparing for the interview. When I walked into their temporary office, I felt like everything in my life had been leading to this moment. The interview wasn't easy. They grilled me on everything from market trends to specific investment strategies. But all those extra hours I'd put in at my current job, all the additional research I'd done in my free time, it all paid off. A week later, I got the call. I was in. From day one, I threw myself into the work. While others went home at 5, I stayed late developing new investment strategies and refining my project proposals. My first major project was managing a portfolio for a mid-sized tech company. When it yielded a 40% return in the first quarter, people started noticing. "Stella, this is exceptional work," my supervisor said during my 6-month review. Along with his praise came a bonus that was larger than my entire year's salary at the previous company. But it wasn't enough. I worked harder, took on bigger projects, built a reputation for turning struggling investments into gold mines. The bonuses kept getting bigger, and I had a plan for every penny. 2 years after starting at Maxwell, I walked into a luxury car dealership. The salesman probably thought I was lost until I pointed to their top-of-the-line model and said, "I'll take that one." An hour later, I was pulling up to my grandparents' house in a gleaming new car, complete with a giant red bow on top. Grandpa's jaw dropped when I handed him the keys. But I wasn't done. The next month, I closed on a stunning apartment in the Heights, the most prestigious new development in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and a view that made you feel like you owned the whole city. I was walking out of my building one morning, coffee in hand, when I heard a familiar voice. "Stella?" Gemma stood there in her designer workout gear, looking like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "Oh, I live here," I said casually, pointing to the penthouse level of the building. "Just bought it, actually." The look on Gemma's face was priceless, a mixture of disbelief, shock, and something else. For the first time in our lives, I saw envy in my perfect sister's eyes. A week after my encounter with Gemma, my phone rang. Seeing my parents' number on the screen was surprising enough. They hadn't called me in years. Even more surprising was that they were in the neighborhood and wanted to stop by. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When they walked into my apartment, their expressions were priceless. Mom's eyes darted from the panoramic windows to the designer furniture, while Dad stood awkwardly in the entrance as if afraid to touch anything. "This is quite impressive," Mom managed, running her finger along my marble kitchen counter. "You must be doing very well for yourself." "I am," I replied simply, offering them seats on my Italian leather sofa. They exchanged glances before Mom cleared her throat. "Well, we actually have some news. Gemma is engaged to Trevor," they announced. "It was announced last month at the engagement party." An engagement party I hadn't been invited to, of course. "They're planning the wedding for 6 months from now," Mom continued, her voice getting that familiar wheedling tone I remembered from childhood. "We've offered to pay half the expenses, as is traditional." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "But it seems the total budget is, well, it's $300,000. I nearly choked on my water. $300,000? "Trevor's family has certain expectations," Mom explained quickly. "They're very prominent in the community. We announced we'd cover half before we knew the amount, and now—" She trailed off, looking at me meaningfully. "Now you need $150,000, I finished for her. "Exactly," Mom brightened. And since you're doing so well, living in this beautiful apartment, working at such a prestigious firm, you want me to give you the money? I said flatly. Loan, Dad interjected. We're asking for a loan. We'll pay you back, of course. We'll even get it notarized. We know it's a lot, Mom said quickly, but we can't back out now. It would be so embarrassing with Trevor's family. They're expecting a certain standard. Like when I wanted to go to college, I interrupted. Like when I begged you for help? When I offered to sign a legal document promising to pay you back? Mom's face flushed. That was different. Different how? Because it was me asking? Because you told me you don't borrow money on principle? Stella, be reasonable. Dad started. Reasonable? I stood up. Like you were reasonable when you told me I wasn't college material? When you offered me a waitress job instead of helping me get an education? When you let Grandpa sell his property to help me while you saved all your money for Gemma? That's not fair, Mom protested. No, what's not fair is that you're only here because you need something from me. You didn't invite me to the engagement party. You haven't spoken to me in years, and now you want $150,000? I walked to the door and opened it. I don't loan money on principle. I believe that's a family tradition, isn't it? Mom's face turned red with anger. How dare you throw our words back at us after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me? I laughed bitterly. Please leave now. They stormed out, Mom muttering about ingratitude and Dad avoiding eye contact. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to them on my terms, in my own home, from a position of strength. The phone rang the next day. It was Gemma. What is wrong with you? She didn't even bother with a hello. Mom told me what happened. How can you be so selfish? I sat back in my office chair, watching the sunset through the panoramic windows, the vibrant colors reflecting the quiet anger that had been growing inside me. Selfish? That's rich coming from you, Gemma. We're family, right? Family helps each other. You've got the money. Everyone knows you're doing well now, so why won't you help with my wedding? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. Family? Now I'm suddenly family? What about when I visited your house and you all called me a beggar? What about when you mocked where I lived? When you laughed at my job? Was I family then? Gemma's voice was defensive. That was different. We were just teasing. You're being ridiculous now. No, I interrupted, my voice steady. What's ridiculous is that none of you spoke to me for years until you needed something. If you're so desperate for money, why don't you ask our parents? They're your real family, after all. They've made that pretty clear over the years. Her voice turned venomous. You bitter, ungrateful! Gemma exploded. You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy apartment and big job. You're still the same pathetic little sister who was never good enough. The line went dead as she hung up. I sat there, feeling a strange calm wash over me. Her words didn't hurt anymore. They just made me tired. A week later, I was sitting at Sunday dinner at my grandparents' house, a tradition I'd kept up ever since college. Grandma was unusually quiet as she served the pot roast. Grandpa broke the silence first, his voice heavy. Your parents called us yesterday. I put down my fork. Let me guess. They asked for money for the wedding. Grandma nodded. They're getting desperate. I think your mother had quite a bit to say about family obligations. When we told them we're retired and don't have that kind of money, your mother had the nerve to suggest we sell something. She said, well, you sold the land for Stella's college, didn't you? Then she suggested we sell the car. I blinked in shock. The car I gave you? She actually suggested you sell my gift? Grandpa's voice had a note of satisfaction. That's when I hung up on her. Told her that, unlike some people, we don't sell gifts from family members who actually care about us. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The three of us sat there in understanding silence, bound together by something deeper than blood ties. Word travels fast in a small town, and my parents made sure it traveled even faster. Within weeks, their version of events had spread through our entire extended family and social circle. I started hearing snippets of their carefully crafted narrative from various sources. Did you hear about the younger daughter? My mother's friend loudly gossiped at the local grocery store, not realizing I was in the next aisle. Got some fancy job, and now she thinks she's too good for her own family. Won't even speak to them anymore. Says they're too poor for her now. At church, relatives would shoot disapproving glances my way when I visited with my grandparents. My Aunt Martha called one evening, heavy with judgment. Your mother told me you wouldn't even let her into your apartment when she came to visit. How could you treat your own mother that way? I could have corrected the record, could have told everyone how my parents had only reached out when they needed money, how they'd never supported my dreams, how they'd mocked and belittled me at every turn. But I'd learned long ago that trying to defend yourself against toxic people only gives them more ammunition. Instead, I focused on my work, spent time with my grandparents, and let the gossip swirl around me like autumn leaves in the wind. My grandparents knew the truth. They'd lived through every moment of it with me, and that was enough. With just 2 weeks left before the wedding, Gemma made one final attempt. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, dressed in her most expensive outfit and flashing her most convincing smile. "Stella, we need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the living room. "This has gone on long enough. We're sisters. We shouldn't be fighting like this." I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching her make herself comfortable on my sofa as if she owned it. "Why are you really here, Gemma?" "To make peace," she said with her best pageant winner smile. "And to help you understand the situation better. You see, Trevor's parents aren't just rich, they're old money. They have connections everywhere. The wedding has to be perfect." I waited, sensing there was more. "The final payments are due next week. The restaurant deposit, the wedding planner's fee, the flowers." She twisted her engagement ring nervously. "If Mom and Dad can't contribute their share, it's going to be so embarrassing. Trevor's parents will find out they couldn't afford it. It won't just reflect badly on them, it'll reflect on me, on my future with Trevor. So this visit isn't really about reconciling, it's about the money." "No," she insisted, her voice shaking. "Well, yes, but—" She stood up and walked over to me, placing her hand on my arm. "Stella, please, you're my sister. I need your help. We need to make a great impression on Trevor's parents." I gently removed her hand, walked to the door, and opened it. "I don't care about impressing Trevor's parents. I don't care about your perfect wedding, and I definitely don't care what any of you think anymore." "You're making a huge mistake," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You'll regret this." I smiled, feeling a rare calm settle over me. "No, Gemma. For the first time in my life, I'm absolutely certain I won't." A few days after Gemma's visit, my phone lit up with a text from Stacy, Gemma's college friend who had always been kind to me. She thought I should know what had happened at the country club the previous evening. "Your parents finally had to come clean to Trevor's family," she wrote. "They couldn't dodge the wedding planner calls anymore. It was apparently quite a scene." I could see it all so clearly. The elegant country club dining room, Trevor's wealthy parents in their designer clothes, the moment my parents had to admit they couldn't afford their share of the wedding expenses. According to Stacy, Trevor's mother had practically turned purple with rage. The fairy tale wedding began to unravel. The honeymoon suite in the Maldives was canceled. The vintage champagne order was scaled back. The designer flower arrangements were simplified. In the end, Trevor's parents agreed to cover all the expenses themselves, but the damage had already been done. The wedding went forward, but it was a far cry from the grandeur they had once envisioned. Of course, I wasn't invited. But I didn't expect to be. My grandparents received an invitation, but they declined to attend, sending a polite note about prior commitments. We spent that Saturday together instead, having a picnic in their backyard, steadfastly avoiding any mention of the event happening across town. A week later, the wedding photos appeared on social media. One evening, I found myself scrolling through them, glass of wine in hand, studying the faces in each carefully staged shot. There was Gemma in her designer gown. Trevor looked stiff and formal, his parents arranged around him like expensive statues. And my parents, easy to spot in their new outfits, probably bought on credit, trying so hard to fit in with this world of old money and country club memberships. Their smiles were strained, their poses awkward. Trevor's parents appeared in only a few photos, their expressions ranging from barely concealed disdain to outright displeasure. In one particularly telling shot, his mother was caught looking at my parents with the kind of expression usually reserved for something unpleasant found on the bottom of one's shoe. Stacy kept me updated over the following weeks. Gemma and Trevor moved into a house his parents had bought them as a wedding gift. My parents rarely visited. Apparently, they weren't quite what Trevor's family had envisioned for Sunday dinners. I haven't spoken to my parents or Gemma since before the wedding. I doubt I ever will again. But sitting here in my apartment, watching the sunset paint the city sky in shades of gold, I finally feel at peace with that fact. Some bridges once burned should stay in the ashes. What do you do when the people you once called family only reach out when they need something? When they've never supported you, but expect you to always support them? Stella spent her whole life being compared to her perfect sister Gemma, who always seemed to get everything she wanted: designer clothes, college acceptance, and the spotlight. Stella, on the other hand, was pushed aside, told that she wasn't college material and that her dreams weren't worth pursuing. But with the unwavering support of her grandparents, Stella fought for her education and her future, making something of herself despite the odds. Years later, when Stella had achieved success working at a prestigious firm, living in a beautiful apartment, her parents reappeared, not to reconcile or show love, but to ask for $150,000 to fund Gemma's wedding. They expected Stella to help, as they always had, without considering what she had already given them. But this time, Stella was done. She walked away from the toxic dynamic, cutting ties with the people who had only ever used her. She didn't need their approval anymore. She had built her success on her own terms. So, what would you do in Stella's shoes? Would you keep giving to a family who never appreciated you, or would you stand your ground and choose yourself? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
I stood in the bathroom, staring at the little pink plus sign on the pregnancy test. My hands trembled as I gripped the sink, a mix of joy and dread washing over me. How would Dane react? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. As I stepped into our living room, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses assaulted my ears. Dane and his friends were already deep into their Friday night revelry. "Honey," I called out, trying to catch his attention over the noise. Dane glanced up from his animated conversation, his eyes slightly glazed. "What's up, babe?" I motioned for him to join me in the kitchen, away from prying ears. He sauntered over, drink in hand, a lopsided grin on his face. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Dane leaned against the counter, taking a swig from his glass. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of telling the guys about our Aspen trip." I swallowed hard, pushing down the irritation rising in my throat. "No, it can't wait. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us. Dane's eyebrows shot up, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of excitement in his eyes, but as quickly as it appeared it vanished. "Oh," he said, his tone flat. "Well, that's unexpected." My heart sank. "Is that all you have to say?" Dane shrugged, glancing back towards the living room. "What do you want me to say, Hannah? We'll deal with it later. Right now, I've got guests to entertain." Before I could respond, he was already heading back to his friends, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my news and my disappointment. I retreated to our bedroom, closing the door on the sounds of merriment. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Max, Dane's childhood friend. "Hey, Hannah. Everything okay? You looked upset when you left the room." I hesitated before replying, "Just not feeling well. Thanks for asking." A moment later, another message. "Want me to send Dane up?" I sighed, typing back, "No, it's fine. He's busy with the party." There was a long pause before Max's response came through. "You know, if you ever need to talk." I stared at the screen, a lump forming in my throat. Max had always been kind, always noticed when things weren't right. Unlike Dane, a knock at the door startled me. "Hannah?" It was Dane. "The guys want to play poker? Mind if we use the dining room table?" I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before answering. "Sure, go ahead." "Thanks, babe. You're the best," Dane called out, his footsteps already retreating down the hall. I lay back on the bed, one hand resting on my still flat stomach. This wasn't how I'd imagined sharing the news of our first child. In my dreams, there had been joy, excitement, plans for the future. Instead, I got indifference and a poker game. As the night wore on, the noise from downstairs grew louder. Laughter, shouts, the occasional crash of something being knocked over. I tried to block it out, to focus on the miracle growing inside me. But with each passing hour, a realization grew alongside it. This child deserved better. I deserved better. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Max. "I'm heading out. Are you sure you're okay?" This time, I didn't hesitate. "No," I typed. "I'm not okay at all." Weeks passed, and my pregnancy progressed, but life in our house remained unchanged. If anything, Dane's parties grew more frequent and wilder. I found myself constantly cleaning up after his friends, dodging drunken guests, and trying to find moments of peace in my own home. One Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I rushed downstairs to find Dane and his buddies sprawled across the living room, surrounded by empty bottles and overturned furniture. "Dane," I said, my voice tight with frustration, "we need to talk." He looked up at me, bleary-eyed and confused. "What's the problem, babe?" I gestured around the room. "This. All of this. I'm 4 months pregnant, and our house is a constant disaster zone. We need to make some changes." Dane stumbled to his feet, swaying slightly. "Come on, Hannah. It's just a little fun. Don't be such a buzzkill." His words stung, but I pressed on. "This isn't about fun. It's about responsibility. We're going to be parents soon." One of Dane's friends, a guy named Trevor, piped up from the couch. "Hey, man, maybe she's right. You should listen to your old lady." Dane whirled on him, suddenly angry. "Don't tell me how to handle my wife, Trevor. This is my house and I'll do what I want." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. "Your house? What about our home, Dane? What about our family?" He waved a dismissive hand. "We've got plenty of time for all that boring family stuff later. Right now we're young. We should enjoy it while we can." I stood there, stunned by his callousness. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Max, who had been quietly observing from the corner. His eyes met mine, filled with sympathy and something else I couldn't quite name. Later that afternoon, as I was folding laundry in our bedroom, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Max. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "I wanted to check on you. That scene downstairs was pretty rough." I sighed, sinking onto the bed. "I don't know what to do anymore, Max. It's like Dane doesn't even care about the baby or me." Max sat beside me, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Have you thought about talking to someone? Maybe a counselor?" I shook my head. "Dane would never agree to that. He doesn't think there's a problem." "What about for yourself, then?" Max suggested. "You need support, Hannah. This isn't healthy for you or the baby." As I considered his words, we heard a commotion from downstairs. Dane's voice rang out, loud and slurred. "Hey, everyone, who's up for a pool party?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "I can't do this anymore, Max. I just can't." He placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to. Listen, I know it's not my place, but I care about you, Hannah. Both of you," he added, nodding towards my growing belly. "If you need a place to stay, to clear your head, my guest room is always open." I looked up at him, surprised by the offer and the warmth in his eyes. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine a different life, one filled with peace and understanding. But before I could respond, Dane's voice boomed from the hallway. "Hannah? Where are you? The guys want to use our bedroom for beer pong." Max's expression hardened. "That's it," he muttered, standing up. "I'm going to talk some sense into him." As he strode towards the door, a mix of gratitude and fear washed over me. "Max, wait," I called out. He paused, looking back at me. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, my hand resting protectively over my stomach. I think I'm ready to take you up on that offer." I woke up in Max's guest room, the unfamiliar quiet a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. As I made my way to the kitchen, I heard Max's voice, low and intense. "Dane, you need to get your act together. Hannah's pregnant, for God's sake." I froze, listening to Dane's muffled response through the phone. "I don't care about your stupid business deals," Max snapped. "Your wife needed you, and you chose to party instead." There was a pause, then Max sighed heavily. "Fine, just think about what I said, okay?" I cleared my throat, announcing my presence. Max spun around, his face softening when he saw me. "Hannah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to hear that." "It's okay," I said, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. "Thank you for trying." Max poured me a cup of herbal tea, his movements careful and deliberate. How are you feeling? Honestly, lost, I admitted. I never thought I'd be 5 months pregnant and hiding out at my husband's best friend's house. Max sat across from me, his eyes full of concern. You're not hiding, Hannah. You're protecting yourself and your baby. Just then, the front door burst open. Dane stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. There you are, he slurred, pointing an accusing finger at me. What the hell, Hannah? You can't just leave like that. I stood up, instinctively placing a hand over my swollen belly. Dane, you're drunk. Go home. He lurched forward, but Max stepped between us. Back off, Dane. You're not thinking straight. Dane's face contorted with rage. Oh, I see how it is. You two sneaking around behind my back, huh? It's not like that, I protested, but Dane was beyond reason. He shoved Max hard, sending him stumbling backward. Some friend you are stealing my wife. Max regained his balance, his voice low and dangerous. Nobody's stealing anyone, Dane. Hannah came here because she felt unsafe in her own home, because of you. Dane's eyes widened, a flicker of shame crossing his face before anger took over again. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know enough, Max replied calmly. I know that Hannah deserves better than what you've been giving her. Dane lunged at Max, his fist connecting with Max's jaw. I screamed as the two men grappled, knocking over chairs and slamming into walls. Stop it, I yelled, tears streaming down my face. Both of you, just stop. They froze, chests heaving, staring at each other with a mixture of anger and regret. This is exactly why I left, I said, my voice shaking. I can't live like this anymore, Dane. I won't bring our child into this chaos. Dane's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. Hannah, I'm sorry. I'll do better, I promise. I shook my head, years of disappointment and broken promises weighing heavily on me. It's too late for that, Dane. I need more than empty words. Max touched his split lip gingerly, watching us with a guarded expression. What do you want to do, Hannah? I took a deep breath, feeling the baby kick as if in encouragement. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Dane's face crumpled, a mix of shock and despair. You can't mean that, he whispered. We're having a baby. Yes, we are, I said, my resolve strengthening. And that's why I have to do this. Our child deserves better than what we've become. As Dane stumbled out, defeated and dazed, I turned to Max. His eyes met mine, filled with a complex mixture of emotions. What now? He asked softly. I squared my shoulders, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. Now I start over, for me and for my baby. The weeks following my decision to divorce Dane were a whirlwind of emotions and practical challenges. I'd moved back into our house, while Dane stayed with a friend. The silence was both a relief and a reminder of how much had changed. One afternoon, as I sorted through our shared belongings, my phone buzzed with a text from Max. How are you holding up? Need any help? I smiled, grateful for his constant support. I'm okay, just packing up memories. Want some company? I can bring coffee and a sympathetic ear. I hesitated, then replied, That would be nice, thanks. An hour later, Max arrived, 2 steaming cups in hand. As we sat on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you, Max, I said softly. He smiled, his eyes warm. You're stronger than you think, Hannah. You would have found a way. As we talked, I found myself opening up about my fears and hopes for the future. Max listened intently, offering gentle advice and reassurance. You know, he said, being a single parent isn't easy, but it's not impossible. Look at me and Sarah, we manage. I nodded, thinking of Max's adorable 5-year-old daughter. You're an amazing father, Max. I hope I can be half as good a mother. He reached out, squeezing my hand. You will be, I have no doubt. The moment was interrupted by the sound of a key in the lock. Dane burst in, his eyes wild and bloodshot. What the hell is this? He shouted, glaring at our joined hands. I jumped to my feet, heart racing. Dane, it's not what you think. Max was just helping me pack. Dane sneered, his words slurring slightly. Oh, I'm sure he was very helpful. Is this why you want a divorce? So you can shack up with my best friend? Max stood, placing himself between us. That's enough, Dane. You're drunk and upset. Why don't you go cool off? Dane lunged forward, shoving Max hard. Don't tell me what to do in my own house. I stepped back, fear coursing through me. Dane, please, think about the baby. You're scaring me. His face contorted with rage. The baby? How do I even know it's mine? Maybe you've been fooling around with Max this whole time. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. How dare you? I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. Max's voice was low and dangerous. You need to leave, Dane. Now. Dane laughed bitterly. Oh, that's rich. You want me to leave so you can comfort my wife? Fine. You know what? You two deserve each other. Hannah, you want to sleep in the kitchen to make room for your new boyfriend? The cruel words hung in the air, a reminder of all the times Dane had dismissed my feelings and needs. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Get out, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Get out of this house and don't come back until you're sober and ready to act like a decent human being. Dane's eyes widened, shocked by my forceful tone. He opened his mouth to argue, but Max stepped forward, his presence imposing. You heard her, Dane. Leave. Now. For a tense moment, I thought Dane might lash out again, but then his shoulders slumped and he turned away, slamming the door behind him. As the adrenaline faded, I sank onto the couch, shaking. Max sat beside me, careful not to touch me. Are you okay? He asked gently. I nodded, then shook my head, then burst into tears. Max hesitated, then pulled me into a comforting hug. As I cried, I realized I couldn't stay in this house anymore. It held too many painful memories, too much of Dane's presence. Max, I said, pulling away and wiping my eyes, I need to ask you something important. He looked at me, concern etched on his face. Anything, Hannah. I took a deep breath. Do you still have that spare room available? I sat in Max's guest room, staring at my phone. The number for Dane's Aunt Joan glowed on the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since Dane had cut ties with her after a heated argument. But I needed her strength now more than ever. Taking a deep breath, I pressed call. Hello? Joan's familiar, gravelly voice answered. It's Hannah. I need your help. There was a pause, then, Hannah dear, what's wrong? The dam broke. I poured out everything, the pregnancy, Dane's indifference, the constant parties, and now the impending divorce. Joan listened quietly, only occasionally murmuring words of sympathy. Oh, honey, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Where are you now? I'm staying with Max, Dane's friend. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Joan's voice hardened. Max, the single father? Hannah, are you sure that's wise? I felt a flicker of defensiveness. Max has been nothing but kind and supportive. I'm sure he has, Joan said, her tone careful. But you're in a vulnerable position, dear. People might talk. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Max poked his head in, his expression troubled. Hannah, Dane's here. He's demanding to see you. My heart raced. Joan, I have to go. Dane's here. Wait, Joan's voice was urgent. Put me on speaker. I want to hear this. Hands shaking, I followed her instructions and walked out to the living room, where Dane stood, looking disheveled and angry. There you are, he sneered. Cozy little setup you've got here with Max. Dane, Max warned, but I held up a hand to stop him. What do you want, Dane? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed bitterly. What do I want? I want my wife back. I want you to stop this ridiculous divorce nonsense and come home. Is that Dane I hear? Joan's voice crackled through the phone speaker. Dane's eyes widened in shock. Aunt Joan, what the hell? Watch your language, young man, Joan snapped. Now, what's this? I hear about you treating your pregnant wife like a doormat? Dane's face flushed with anger. This is none of your business, you old bat. Hannah, hang up the phone. We need to talk privately. I felt a surge of courage, bolstered by Joan's presence, even if only through the phone. No, Dane. I'm done with private talks that go nowhere. You want to talk? Let's talk right here, right now. Fine, he spat. You want to air our dirty laundry? How about we talk about how you've been cozying up to my best friend while I've been working my ass off to provide for our family? Max stepped forward, his jaw clenched. That's enough, Dane. You know that's not true. Oh, defending her honor now, are we? Dane sneered. Both of you, stop it, I shouted, surprising even myself with the force in my voice. This isn't about Max. This is about us, Dane. About how you've ignored me, dismissed my feelings, and turned our home into a frat house. I'm having a baby, your baby, and you can't even be bothered to show up to a single doctor's appointment. The room fell silent, save for Joan's soft, That's it, girl, let it out. Dane's face crumpled, the anger giving way to something that looked almost like remorse. Hannah, I didn't realize. But I wasn't finished. I've tried, Dane. God knows I've tried. But I can't do this anymore. I won't bring our child into this toxic environment. So that's it? Dane's voice was small. You're just giving up on us? I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a wave of sadness for what we'd lost. No, Dane. You gave up on us a long time ago. I'm just finally accepting it. As Dane stumbled out, defeated, I turned to Max, who was watching me with a mix of concern and admiration. Hannah? Joan's voice came through the phone. I think it's time you came to stay with me for a while. What do you say? I looked around at Max's cozy home, then down at my swollen belly. It was time for a fresh start, away from all of this. Yes, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I think that's exactly what I need. I stood on Joan's porch, my heart pounding as I watched Dane's car pull up. It had been 2 weeks since I'd moved in with his aunt, and he'd finally agreed to meet. As he stepped out of the car, I noticed how disheveled he looked. A far cry from his usual polished appearance. Hannah, he said, his voice hoarse, can we talk? Before I could respond, Joan appeared beside me, her presence both comforting and formidable. You can talk right here, Dane. I think we've all had enough of your private conversations. Dane's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Fine. Hannah, I'm sorry. I've been a terrible husband. I want to make things right. I felt a flicker of hope, quickly extinguished by the memory of countless broken promises. How, Dane? How can you possibly make this right? He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. I've stopped drinking. I'm seeing a therapist. I want to be there for you and the baby. Please, just give me another chance. I wavered, torn between my lingering feelings for him and the pain he'd caused. Joan, sensing my hesitation, stepped forward. That's all well and good, Dane, but actions speak louder than words. Why don't you come inside and we can discuss this like adults? As we settled in Joan's living room, the tension was palpable. Dane kept glancing at me, his eyes pleading. Just as Joan was about to speak, the front door burst open. Party's here. A group of Dane's friends stumbled in, clearly drunk. My heart sank as I recognized Trevor, the ringleader of Dane's worst behavior. Dane jumped to his feet, his face pale. Guys, what are you doing here? How did you even know where I was? Trevor laughed, waving his phone. GPS tracking, bro. We couldn't let you face the old ball and chain alone, could we? I felt sick. You've been tracking me? Dane shook his head frantically. No, Hannah, it's not like that. I wanted to make sure you were safe. Joan's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. Everyone who wasn't invited needs to leave. Now. Trevor sneered at her. Who's the old lady? Come on, Dane. Ditch these buzzkills and let's go have some real fun. I watched Dane holding my breath. This was it. The moment of truth. Would he choose his friends over his family once again? Dane looked at me, then at his friends, his face a mask of indecision. Guys, I can't. Hannah's pregnant. I need to be here. Trevor rolled his eyes. Pregnant? So what? That doesn't mean your life has to end. Come on, man, don't be whipped. Something in me snapped. I stood up, my voice shaking with fury. Get out! All of you. You've ruined my marriage, my home, and now you're trying to ruin the one chance we have to fix things. Leave. Joan stepped forward, her eyes blazing. You heard the lady. Out, before I call the police. As Trevor and the others shuffled out, grumbling, I turned to Dane. If you walk out that door with them, we're done. For good. Dane looked torn, his gaze flicking between me and his retreating friends. Hannah, choose, Dane, I said, my hand resting protectively on my swollen belly. Right now, us or them. The silence stretched, agonizing. Then, to my shock and Joan's visible disgust, Dane took a step towards the door. I'm sorry, he whispered. I can't do this. I'm not ready. As the door closed behind him, I felt something inside me break. Tears streamed down my face as Joan wrapped me in a fierce hug. Oh, honey, she murmured. I'm so sorry, but you're better off without him. I nodded, unable to speak through my sobs. As the sound of Dane's car faded into the distance, I realized with startling clarity that this truly was the end. There was no going back now. What do I do now? I whispered, feeling lost and overwhelmed. Joan's voice was steel and velvet. Now, my dear, we fight. For you, for that baby, and for the life you deserve. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. I'm ready. The next morning, I woke with a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in months. Joan was already in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. I'm going back to the house, I announced. I need to get my things and and tell Dane it's over. Joan nodded, her eyes sharp. I'm coming with you. As we pulled up to my old home, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The house was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the constant parties of the past. I unlocked the door. Joan closed behind me. The living room was a disaster. Empty bottles, overturned furniture, and the lingering smell of stale beer. Dane? I called out. No answer. We made our way upstairs, and I froze at the bedroom door. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and there in the middle of our bed was Dane, passed out with a woman I didn't recognize. Oh, honey, Joan whispered, squeezing my shoulder. The pain that shot through me was almost physical, but beneath it, fire of anger began to burn. Dane! I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. He jolted awake, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Hannah! What are you doing here? The woman beside him stirred, looking confused and embarrassed. I came to get my things, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, and to tell you it's over. I want a divorce. Dane stumbled out of bed, reaching for his pants. Hannah, wait, this isn't, I can explain. Save it, Joan snapped. I think we've seen all we need to see. As I began gathering my belongings, Dane followed me around the room, pleading and making excuses. The woman quietly slipped out, avoiding eye contact. Hannah, please, Dane begged. I made a mistake. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. I whirled on him, fury coursing through me. A mistake? You've been making mistakes our entire marriage, Dane. I'm pregnant with your child, and you're out partying and sleeping with other women. I'm sorry, he cried. I'll change. I swear. We can work this out. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. No, we can't. It's too late. As I zipped up my suitcase, Dane's demeanor suddenly changed. His eyes hardened and he grabbed my arm. You can't leave me, he hissed. What about the baby? You can't take my child away. Joan stepped forward, her voice like ice. Let her go, Dane. Now. But Dane was beyond reason. This is all your fault, he shouted at Joan. You turned her against me. No, Dane, I said, wrenching my arm free. You did that all on your own. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Dane lunged at Joan, his face contorted with rage. I screamed, trying to get between them. In the scuffle, I lost my balance, stumbling backwards. I felt a sharp pain as I hit the edge of the dresser, then everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors filling the room. Joan sat beside me, her face etched with worry. The baby? I whispered, fear gripping my heart. Joan squeezed my hand. She's okay, you both are. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a wave of anger and determination. Where's Dane? I asked. In custody, Joan replied. Assault charges, and... She hesitated. Hannah, there's more. The police found drugs in the house, a lot of them. I closed my eyes, feeling a strange mix of shock and vindication. When I opened them again, I met Joan's gaze with steely resolve. I want those divorce papers drawn up, I said, and I want full custody. Joan nodded, a fierce pride in her eyes. You've got it, honey, and I'll be with you every step of the way. As I lay there, one hand resting protectively on my belly, I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. 6 months after the divorce, I stood in the nursery of my childhood home, gently rocking my newborn daughter, Lily. The soft pink walls and the quiet hum of the mobile were a world away from the chaos of my life with Dane. As I gazed at Lily's peaceful face, my phone buzzed. It was a news alert about Dane's company. With trembling fingers, I opened the article. Major financial firm implicated in drug scandal, the headline blared. As I read, my heart raced. Dane and several of his closest friends were being investigated for using the company to launder drug money. The parties, the erratic behavior, the drugs found in our house, it all suddenly made horrifying sense. I sank into the rocking chair, clutching Lily close. A knock at the door startled me. Hannah? It was Joan. Have you seen the news? I nodded, unable to speak. Joan entered, her face a mix of shock and vindication. Oh, honey, she said, sitting on the ottoman beside me. How are you feeling? I took a deep breath. Relieved, I admitted, surprising myself. And free. Joan squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you know, Hannah. You got out just in time. As we sat in companionable silence, my phone rang again. It was Max. Hannah, I just heard, he said, his voice filled with concern. Are you okay? I am, I replied, realizing it was true. How are you holding up? I know Dane was your friend. Max sighed. The Dane I knew died a long time ago. I'm just glad you and Lily are safe. After we hung up, I looked at Joan. I need to do something. Can you watch Lily for an hour? She nodded, understanding in her eyes. I drove to the county jail where Dane was being held. As I sat across from him in the visitation room, I barely recognized the man before me. He looked haggard, defeated. "Hannah," he said, his voice hoarse, "I'm so sorry for everything." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not here for your apology, Dane. I'm here to tell you that Lily and I are going to be fine. We're moving forward, and you need to let us go." Dane's eyes filled with tears. Can I ever see her?" I shook my head. "Not now. Maybe someday when she's older if she wants to, but that's her choice to make, not yours or mine." As I stood to leave, Dane called out, "I did love you, Hannah, in my own messed up way." I paused at the door. "I know, but sometimes love isn't enough. Goodbye, Dane." Driving home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The future stretched out before me, uncertain but full of possibility. Back in the nursery, I found Joan singing softly to Lily. She looked up as I entered, a knowing smile on her face. "Feel better?" she asked. I nodded, taking Lily into my arms. "I feel ready for whatever comes next." Joan stood, wrapping us both in a warm embrace. "That's my girl. You've got this, Hannah, and you've got us." As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the window, I looked down at my daughter, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, and in that moment, I knew we would be okay. "You and me, little one," I whispered. "We're going to build a beautiful life together." Lily cooed softly, as if in agreement. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope blooming in my chest. Strong, resilient, and unstoppable. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head on. With Lily in my arms, Joan by my side, and friends like Max to support us, I knew we could weather any storm. As I put Lily to bed that night, I made a silent vow. We would learn from the past, but we wouldn't be defined by it. We would build a life filled with love, laughter, and strength. And most importantly, we would never settle for less than we deserved. The tides had turned, and this time they were carrying us towards a brighter shore. I stared at the text message on my phone, my hands shaking. The words blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not after 10 years of marriage. "Sarah, honey, are you ready to go?" Jacob's voice called from downstairs. I quickly wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. "Just a minute." I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. As I descended the stairs, I saw Jacob standing by the door, keys in hand. He smiled at me, that same warm smile that had made me fall in love with him all those years ago. But now, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "There you are," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I turned my head slightly, and his lips grazed my ear instead. If he noticed, he didn't show it. "We don't want to be late for the Johnsons' anniversary party." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As we drove to the party, Jacob chatted about his day at work, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I half listened, my mind replaying the message I'd received from an unknown number. "Your husband is cheating on you with me. I'm sorry, but you deserve to know the truth." At the party, I plastered on a smile and made small talk with our friends and neighbors. Jacob's hand rested on the small of my back, a gesture that used to make me feel loved and protected. Now it felt like a brand of ownership. "Sarah, dear?" Mrs. A. Johnson approached us, beaming. "So good to see you both. 40 years of marriage, can you believe it?" I felt Jacob's chest rumble with laughter. "Maybe we'll make it there someday, right, sweetheart?" I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of guilt or deception. But all I saw was the man I'd loved for a decade, smiling down at me with apparent affection. "Excuse me," I mumbled, suddenly needing air. I made my way to the back porch, gripping the railing as I tried to steady my breathing. "Are you okay?" A soft voice startled me. I turned to see Olivia, the Johnsons' daughter, looking at me with concern. She was in her mid-20s, with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just needed some fresh air." Olivia nodded, joining me at the railing. "It can get a bit stuffy in there, can't it? All those happy couples." She trailed off, a wistful look in her eyes. "You're not seeing anyone?" I asked, grateful for the distraction. She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's complicated. There's someone, but he's not available." My heart skipped a beat. "Oh," I tried to keep my voice casual. That must be difficult. Olivia sighed. It is, but he says his marriage is loveless, that they're just going through the motions. He promises he'll leave her soon. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the railing tighter, my knuckles turning white. Olivia, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, who is he? She looked at me, confusion clouding her features. I can't say. It's not my place to. Sarah? Jacob's voice cut through the tension like a knife. We both turned to see him standing in the doorway, his eyes darting between us. Everything okay out here? I looked at Olivia, saw the guilt and realization dawning on her face. Then I turned to Jacob, the man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. No, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. No, Jacob. Everything is not okay. I stood in our kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. Jacob paced back and forth, his face a mask of guilt and defiance. How could you? I whispered, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. 10 years, Jacob. 10 years of marriage, and you throw it all away for what? A fling with a girl half your age? Jacob stopped pacing and faced me, his eyes pleading. Sarah, it's not what you think. Olivia and it just happened. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed bitterly. Oh, you never meant to hurt me? Is that why you told her our marriage was loveless? That we were just going through the motions? His face paled. You talked to Olivia? I didn't have to, I spat. She told me everything without realizing who I was. God, Jacob, how could you be so cruel? He reached for me, but I recoiled. Don't touch me, I hissed. I want you out of this house, now. Sarah, please, he begged. We can work this out. I'll end things with Olivia, I promise. Just give me another chance. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. There are no more chances, Jacob. You've broken something that can't be fixed. As Jacob packed a bag, I retreated to our bedroom, my bedroom now, and collapsed on the bed. My whole world had shattered in the span of a few hours. How was I supposed to move forward from this? With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Hello? A familiar voice answered. Charlotte? I choked out. It's Sarah? I need you. An hour later, I was sitting on Charlotte's couch, a steaming mug of tea in my hands. My old college roommate and best friend listened intently as I poured out the whole sordid story. Oh, honey, Charlotte sighed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry you're going through this. What a bastard. I leaned into her embrace, grateful for her unwavering support. I just feel so stupid, Charlie. How did I not see it? Hey, none of that, she said firmly. You are not stupid. Jacob is the one who made the choice to betray you. This is on him, not you. I nodded, wiping away fresh tears. What do I do now? I can't imagine going back to that house, sleeping in that bed. Charlotte squeezed my hand. You stay here with me for as long as you need. We'll figure this out together, okay? As the days passed, Charlotte became my rock. She helped me navigate the murky waters of separation, accompanying me to meet with a divorce lawyer and standing by my side as I packed up my things from the house I'd shared with Jacob. One evening, as we sat on her balcony watching the sunset, Charlotte turned to me with a determined look in her eyes. Sarah, I think it's time you started focusing on yourself. What do you want for your future? I blinked, realizing I hadn't thought beyond my pain and anger. I don't know. My whole life was wrapped up in Jacob and our marriage. Well, now's your chance to rediscover yourself, Charlotte said encouragingly. What about your career? You've always loved teaching. Maybe it's time to pursue that advanced degree you've been talking about? A small spark of excitement flickered in my chest. You're right. I've always wanted to become a reading specialist. Maybe this is my opportunity to make that happen. Charlotte grinned. That's my girl. You're going to come out of this stronger than ever, Sarah. I just know it. As we clinked our wine glasses together, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since my world had fallen apart. But just then, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jacob. Sarah, we need to talk. There's something you should know about Olivia. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. What more could he possibly have to say? And why did I have a sinking feeling that my journey through this mess was far from over? I stared at the divorce papers on the kitchen table, my hand hovering over the signature line. Charlotte sat beside me, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of emotions swirling inside me. You don't have to do this today if you're not ready, Sarah, she said gently. I took a deep breath. No, I need to do this. It's time. With a trembling hand, I signed my name, officially ending my 10-year marriage to Jacob. As I set the pen down, a mix of relief and sadness washed over me. I'm proud of you, Charlotte said, squeezing my shoulder. This is the first step towards your new life. I nodded, wiping away a stray tear. You're right. I can't keep living in the past. It's time to focus on my future. The next day, I walked into the elementary school where I taught, my head held high. As I passed the principal's office, a voice called out, Sarah, do you have a moment? I turned to see Principal Roberts beckoning me inside. Curious, I followed her into her office. I heard about your situation, she said, her eyes filled with sympathy. I'm so sorry you're going through this, but I have a proposition that might help take your mind off things. My interest piqued. What kind of proposition? We're starting a new reading intervention program next semester, she explained. I know you've been interested in becoming a reading specialist. Would you like to lead the program? My heart raced with excitement. Are you serious? I'd love to. Principal Roberts smiled. Excellent. It will require some additional training and certification, but I think you're perfect for the role. As I left her office, my mind was buzzing with possibilities. This was exactly the kind of challenge I needed to help me move forward. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparing for my new role. The extra work was exhausting but exhilarating. For the first time in months, I felt like I was truly living for myself, not just going through the motions. One evening, as I was leaving the school after a late planning session, I quite literally ran into someone in the hallway. Oh, I'm so sorry, I exclaimed, bending down to help gather the scattered papers. No worries, a deep voice chuckled. I wasn't watching where I was going either. I looked up to find myself face to face with Michael, the new 5th grade teacher. His kind brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled at me. Sarah, right? He asked. I've seen you around, but we haven't officially met. I'm Michael. We shook hands, and I felt an unexpected spark at his touch. Flustered, I quickly changed the subject. What are you doing here so late? I asked. He held up a stack of papers. Grading never ends, does it? But I could ask you the same question. I explained about the new reading program, and Michael's eyes lit up with interest. That sounds amazing, he said enthusiastically. I have a few students who could really benefit from something like that. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and you could tell me more about it? I hesitated for a moment, my recent heartbreak making me wary. But something about Michael's warm smile and genuine interest made me nod. I'd like that, I said softly. As I drove home that night, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The excitement of my new career opportunity, the unexpected connection with Michael, and the lingering pain of my failed marriage all competed for attention. Just as I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jacob. Sarah, I know you're moving on, but there's something you need to know. It's about Olivia. Can we meet? My stomach clenched. Just when I thought I was making progress, Jacob threatened to pull me back into the drama. Should I agree to meet him? Or was it time to truly cut all ties and focus on my new beginning? As I sat in my car staring at the text, I realized that the choice I made now would set the course for the rest of my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to take control of my own destiny. I never expected to fall in love again, especially not so soon after my divorce. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Michael and I had been meeting for coffee regularly to discuss the reading program, but our conversations quickly expanded beyond work. His kindness, humor, and genuine interest in my thoughts and feelings were a balm to my wounded heart. One evening, as we walked through the park after dinner, Michael took my hand. The simple gesture sent a jolt of electricity through me. Sarah, he said, his voice soft but serious. I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush you, but I need you to know how I feel. I'm falling in love with you. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through me. Michael, I think I'm falling for you too, but I'm scared. What if I'm not ready? He squeezed my hand gently. We'll take it as slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few months, our relationship blossomed. Michael was everything Jacob wasn't, attentive, supportive, and honest. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and appreciated. But just as I was starting to believe in happily ever after again, life threw me another curveball. It was a crisp autumn evening when Michael surprised me with a picnic in the park where we first confessed our feelings. As we sat on the blanket, surrounded by falling leaves, he took my hands in his. "Sarah," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "These past few months have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what true love really means." My breath caught in my throat as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know it might seem fast," he continued, "but when you know, you know. Sarah, will you marry me?" Time seemed to stand still as I stared at the beautiful ring nestled in the box. A whirlwind of emotions swept through me: joy, love, excitement, and fear. "Michael, I hesitated, tears welling up in my eyes. "I love you so much. But I'm scared. My last marriage, it ended so badly. What if I'm not ready for this?" Michael's face softened with understanding. "I know you're scared, Sarah, and I understand why. But I'm not Jacob. I will never betray you or take you for granted. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." As I looked into his earnest eyes, I felt my fears begin to melt away. This was Michael, kind, loving, trustworthy Michael. He wasn't Jacob, and it wasn't fair to let my past dictate my future. "Yes," I whispered, a smile breaking through my tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Michael's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto my finger. As we embraced, I felt a sense of peace and rightness that I hadn't experienced in years. But our moment of bliss was interrupted by the harsh buzz of my phone. I reluctantly pulled away from Michael to check it, thinking it might be Charlotte wanting to know how the evening went. Instead, I saw Jacob's name on the screen. My stomach clenched as I read his message. "Sarah, I know you're moving on, but there's something you need to know. Olivia is pregnant, and she says it's mine. I don't know what to do. Please, can we talk?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked from the message to the sparkling ring on my finger, then back to Michael's concerned face. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. I took a deep breath, knowing that my response to this message could change everything. Do I ignore Jacob and focus on my new life with Michael? Or do I get involved in this new drama, potentially jeopardizing my fresh start? As the weight of the decision pressed down on me, I realized that the choice I made now would not only affect my future but the lives of everyone involved. With trembling fingers, I began to type my response, hoping against hope that I was making the right choice. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the little plastic stick in my trembling hands. 2 pink lines, clear as day, pregnant. My mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Joy, fear, excitement, panic. They all battled for dominance as I tried to process this life-changing news. "Sarah?" Charlotte's voice called from the other side of the bathroom door. "Are you okay in there?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Yeah, I'm coming out." I opened the door to find Charlotte waiting anxiously. One look at my face told her everything. "Oh my God," she whispered, pulling me into a tight hug. "You're pregnant?" I nodded against her shoulder, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I don't know what to do, Charlie. I'm scared." Charlotte led me to the couch, keeping an arm around my shoulders. "Okay, let's think this through. How do you feel about it?" I'm happy," I admitted, surprising myself. "I've always wanted to be a mother, but the timing, God, Charlie, I just got engaged to Michael. We haven't even set a wedding date yet. And Jacob." The mention of my ex-husband's name hung heavy in the air. I hadn't responded to his message about Olivia's pregnancy, choosing instead to focus on my relationship with Michael. But now, everything was infinitely more complicated. "Have you told Michael yet?" Charlotte asked gently. I shook my head. I wanted to be sure first, and I needed time to process it myself. "He'll be thrilled, Sarah," Charlotte reassured me. "Michael loves you. He'll support you no matter what." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I love you." Fresh tears welled up in my eyes. What if he thinks it's too soon? What if he doesn't want this? Charlotte squeezed my hand. "Sarah, look at me. Michael is not Jacob. He's proven time and time again that he's in this for the long haul. Trust in that." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. I need to tell him tonight." That evening, I paced nervously in my living room, waiting for Michael to arrive. When the doorbell rang, I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Hey, beautiful." Michael greeted me with a kiss. His smile faded as he noticed my tense expression. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I led him to the couch, my heart pounding. "Michael, I have something to tell you." His brow furrowed with concern. "You're scaring me, Sarah. What is it?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Michael sat in stunned silence. Then, to my utter amazement, a broad smile spread across his face. "We're having a baby?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. I nodded, tears of relief spilling down my cheeks. You're happy about this?" Michael pulled me into his arms, laughing joyfully. "Happy, Sarah? I'm ecstatic. This is incredible news." As we embraced, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Michael's unconditional love and support washed over me, soothing my fears. But our moment of bliss was interrupted by a harsh knock at the door. Michael and I exchanged confused glances. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked. I shook my head, a sense of dread creeping over me. As I opened the door, my worst fears were confirmed. Jacob stood on my doorstep, his face a storm of emotions. "Sarah, we need to talk. Now." I felt Michael come up behind me, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "Jacob, this isn't a good time," I said firmly. "It's about Olivia," Jacob pressed. And the baby. I think there's something you should know." My hand instinctively went to my own stomach, where our little secret was growing. In that moment, I realized I had a crucial decision to make. Do I let Jacob back into my life, potentially disrupting the happiness I've found with Michael? Or do I close the door on my past once and for all, focusing solely on the future growing inside me? As I stood on the threshold between my past and my future, I knew that whatever choice I made would irrevocably change the course of not just my life, but the lives of everyone involved. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Michael squeezed my hand reassuringly as we sat across from Jacob in a quiet corner of the local cafe. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. "So," Jacob began, his eyes darting between Michael and me. "You wanted to talk. What's this about?" I exchanged a glance with Michael, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Jacob, we have some news." I paused, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. "I'm pregnant." Jacob's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions, shock, disbelief, and then, to my horror, anger. "Pregnant?" he spat. "How convenient. Let me guess, it's his." He jerked his head towards Michael. "Of course it's mine," Michael said firmly, his arm tightening around me protectively. Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Is it? Or are you just covering for her? After all, Sarah, we were still married not that long ago." I felt as if I'd been slapped. "How dare you?" I hissed, tears stinging my eyes. "You have no right to accuse me of anything, not after what you did." "What I did?" Jacob laughed bitterly. "At least I was honest about Olivia's pregnancy. You're trying to pass this off as his when we both know the timing doesn't add up." My world tilted on its axis. "Olivia's pregnancy?" I whispered, looking at Michael in confusion. He looked just as shocked as I felt. Jacob's face paled as he realized his mistake. You didn't know?" "No," I said, my voice barely audible. "You never told me. You just showed up at my door, demanding to talk." The cafe suddenly felt too small, too crowded. I stood up abruptly, needing air. Michael rose with me, concern etched on his face. "Sarah, wait," Jacob called as I rushed towards the exit. But I couldn't bear to hear another word. Outside, I gulped in the cool air, trying to make sense of everything. Michael's hands on my shoulders anchored me to reality. "Sarah, look at me," he said gently. "None of what Jacob said changes anything between us. I love you, and I love our baby. That's all that matters." I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. But Jacob's words had planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't shake. "Michael, what if he's right about the timing?" Michael's face softened. "Sarah, even if that were true, which we don't know for sure, it wouldn't change how I feel. This is our child no matter what." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Charlotte. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about Jacob and Olivia. Call me ASAP." My heart raced as I showed Michael the message. Just then, Jacob burst out of the cafe. "Sarah, please," he pleaded. "Let me explain. About Olivia, about everything." I felt torn between my past and my future, between the man who had betrayed me and the man who stood by me through everything. The weight of my unborn child seemed to press down on me, demanding a decision. "Enough," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm done with your lies and manipulations, Jacob. Whatever is going on with you and Olivia, it's not my problem anymore. Jacob's face crumpled. But Sarah, there's more you need to know. About Olivia, about the baby. It's not what you think. As Jacob's words hung in the air, I felt the world closing in around me. My phone buzzed again, Charlotte's name flashing on the screen. Michael stood beside me, a pillar of strength. And Jacob, the man I once thought I'd spend my life with, looked more lost and desperate than I'd ever seen him. In that moment, I realized that the choice I made now would not only affect my life and the life of my unborn child, but would ripple out to touch everyone around me. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, knowing that whatever Charlotte had to tell me could change everything once again. My hands shook as I dialed Charlotte's number, Michael's steady presence beside me the only thing keeping me grounded. Jacob hovered nearby, his face a mask of anxiety. "Sarah?" Charlotte's voice crackled through the speaker. "Thank God you called. You need to hear this." I put the phone on speaker, my heart racing. "What's going on, Charlie?" "I just spoke with Olivia," Charlotte said, her voice tense. "Sarah, she told me everything. Jacob's been lying to her too." Jacob's face paled. "What? That's not." I held up a hand, silencing him. "Go on, Charlotte." "Olivia said Jacob told her he was separated from you, that your marriage was over in all but name. She had no idea you were still together when their affair started." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stared at Jacob, seeing him clearly for the first time. "Is this true?" Jacob's shoulders slumped. "Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, fury rising in me. "How you lied to both of us? How you manipulated everyone around you?" Charlotte's voice cut through the tension. "There's more, Sarah. Olivia, she's not sure the baby is Jacob's." A stunned silence fell over us. Jacob looked like he'd been punched in the gut. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "She was seeing someone else around the same time," Charlotte explained. "She thought Jacob was her only option, but now—" I ended the call, my mind reeling. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling around me. "Sarah," Jacob pleaded, reaching for me. "I know I messed up, but I love you. I always have. Can't we—" "Stop," I said, my voice cold. "Just stop, Jacob. I don't want to hear any more of your lies." Michael, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. "I think you should leave, Jacob, now." Jacob's face hardened. "This isn't over, Sarah. That baby could still be mine. You can't keep me away." As Jacob stormed off, I felt my knees give way. Michael caught me, holding me close as sobs racked my body. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm here. We'll get through this together." But even as I clung to Michael, doubts crept in. What if Jacob was right? What if the baby was his? Could I trust anyone anymore? The next few days passed in a blur of doctor's appointments and sleepless nights. Michael was a constant source of support, but I could see the strain in his eyes. The uncertainty was taking its toll on both of us. Then one evening, as we sat in tense silence in my living room, a knock at the door shattered the quiet. I opened it to find Olivia standing there, her eyes red-rimmed and her hand resting protectively on her slightly swollen belly. "Sarah," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. For everything. I need to talk to you." I hesitated, torn between slamming the door and hearing her out. Michael appeared behind me, his hand on my shoulder. "It's your call, Sarah," he said softly. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Taking a deep breath, I stepped aside to let Olivia in. As she entered, her eyes darted nervously between Michael and me. "I know you probably hate me," Olivia began, "but there's something you need to know. About Jacob, about the baby, about everything." My heart pounded in my chest as I braced myself for whatever bombshell Olivia was about to drop. In that moment, I realized that the truth she was about to reveal could either shatter the fragile new life I was building or provide the closure I desperately needed to move forward. As Olivia took a shaky breath to begin her story, I felt the weight of my own unborn child, a silent reminder of everything at stake. Whatever came next, I knew my world would never be the same. The contractions hit me like a freight train, each one more intense than the last. I gripped Michael's hand tightly as we rushed to the hospital, my mind a whirlwind of fear and excitement. "You're doing great, Sarah," Michael reassured me, his voice steady despite the panic in his eyes. "We're almost there." As we burst through the hospital doors, I saw a familiar face, Charlotte, waiting anxiously in the lobby. She rushed to my side, her presence instantly calming. "I'm here, sweetie," she said, squeezing my free hand. "You've got this." The next few hours were a blur of pain, encouragement, and determination. Michael and Charlotte stood by me, unwavering in their support. As I pushed with all my might, I thought about the journey that had led me here, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the unexpected joy that had followed. Finally, with one last, monumental effort, I heard it, the piercing cry of new life entering the world, my baby girl. She's beautiful, Michael whispered, tears streaming down his face as the nurse placed her in my arms. I looked down at my daughter, overwhelmed by the love that flooded through me. In that moment, all the pain and uncertainty of the past melted away. This was what mattered. This was my future. As I cradled my newborn, a soft knock at the door caught our attention. To my surprise, Olivia stood in the doorway, her own belly now prominently showing. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said hesitantly. I wanted to see if you were okay, and to apologize again for everything." I looked at Michael and Charlotte, who nodded encouragingly. "Come in, Olivia," I said softly. As Olivia approached, I saw the regret and sincerity in her eyes. "Sarah, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for the pain I caused you. I was so blinded by Jacob's lies, I didn't see the truth until it was too late." I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "We were both victims of Jacob's deception, Olivia. It's time we both let go of that pain and focus on the future." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at my daughter. "She's gorgeous, Sarah. You and Michael must be so happy." Michael wrapped his arm around me, beaming with pride. "We are, and we're grateful for every step that led us here, even the painful ones." As we sat there, an unlikely group bonded by shared experiences and new beginnings, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Jacob's betrayal had shattered my world, but from those broken pieces I had built something stronger, more beautiful than I could have imagined. Charlotte broke the comfortable silence. "So what's this little angel's name?" I smiled, looking down at my daughter's peaceful face. "Hope," I said softly. "Her name is Hope." The room filled with murmurs of approval and gentle laughter. As I gazed at the faces around me, Michael, my rock and partner, Charlotte, my unwavering friend, and even Olivia, an unexpected ally, I realized that Hope wasn't just my daughter's name. It was what had carried me through the darkest times, what had led me to this moment of joy and new beginnings. "Welcome to the world, Hope," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "You are so loved." As the sun set outside the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the room, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The road had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a place of love, forgiveness, and endless possibilities. With Hope in my arms and my chosen family around me, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The future was bright, full of promise, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. As I drifted off to sleep, exhausted but content, I heard Michael's soft voice. "I love you both so much," he murmured, his hand gently stroking Hope's tiny fingers. In that moment, I knew that this love, this family, this new chapter, was everything I had ever wanted and more. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by a joy so profound it took my breath away. Hope stirred in my arms, her tiny yawn a reminder of the beautiful journey we were just beginning. And as I closed my eyes, I smiled, knowing that the best was yet to come. I stared at the bank statement in disbelief, my hands shaking. This couldn't be right. I blinked, hoping the numbers would magically change, but they remained stubbornly the same. A $50,000 loan from Richard's parents? When did this happen? "Richard," I called out, my voice echoing through our suburban home. "Can you come here for a second?" I heard his footsteps approaching, and he appeared in the doorway of our home office, an easy smile on his face. "What's up, Lucia?" I held up the statement. "Care to explain this?" His smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, that? It's nothing to worry about, honey. Just a little financial help from Mom and Dad." "A little help?" I felt my blood pressure rising. "Richard, $50,000 is not a little help. When were you planning on telling me about this?" He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "I didn't think it was a big deal. You know how my parents are, always wanting to help out." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "That's not the point. We're married. We're supposed to make these decisions together. Look, Lucia, he said, his tone turning patronizing, I didn't want to bother you with the details. You've been so busy with work lately, I thought I'd handle it. I stood up, facing him directly. Handle it? By going behind my back? We agreed to be open about our finances when we got married, remember? Richard's face hardened. I made an executive decision. Sometimes that's necessary in a marriage. Necessary? I scoffed. What was so necessary that you needed $50,000 without discussing it with me? He waved his hand dismissively. It's complicated business stuff. You wouldn't understand. That stung. Try me, I challenged. Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, can we talk about this later? I have a meeting in 10 minutes. I felt the anger bubbling up inside me. No, we can't talk about this later. This is important, Richard. We need to discuss this now. He checked his watch, impatience clear on his face. I don't have time for this right now, Lucia. We'll talk tonight, okay? Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, stunned and furious. I sank back into my chair, my mind racing. This wasn't like Richard. We'd always been open with each other, especially about money. What was he hiding? My phone buzzed, startling me. It was a text from my best friend Meredith. Lunch today? I need girl talk. I smiled despite my anger. Meredith always had perfect timing. Absolutely, I texted back. You won't believe what I just found out. As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a piece of mail on Richard's desk. It was addressed to him, but the return address caught my eye. Stella Jewelers. My stomach twisted. Our anniversary wasn't for months, and my birthday had just passed. I picked up the envelope, weighing it in my hand. It felt like it contained a small box. Should I open it? No, I decided, putting it back down. I wasn't going to stoop to his level of secrecy. But as I walked out the door, the image of that envelope burned in my mind. First the loan, now this mysterious package. What else was Richard hiding? I climbed into my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As I pulled out of the driveway, I made a silent vow to myself. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. Richard might think he could keep secrets from me, but he was about to learn just how determined I could be. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would turn my entire world upside down. I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me since discovering Richard's secret loan. As I sat at my desk, trying to focus on work, my mind kept drifting back to our argument. Something wasn't adding up. The ping of an incoming email jolted me from my thoughts. It was from Richard. Hey, honey, can you transfer $300 to my account for this month's expenses? Thanks. I blinked at the screen, confused. Only $300? That was barely enough to cover groceries, let alone our other bills. Richard's six-figure salary had always covered most of our expenses. What was going on? I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. Typical. Richard, it's me. We need to talk about this $300. Call me back, please. Hours ticked by with no response. By dinner time, I was fuming. The front door opened, and Richard strolled in, whistling. Hey, Lucia, he said, dropping his briefcase. What's for dinner? I crossed my arms. We need to talk. His smile faltered. About what? About the $300 you asked for. Richard, that's not nearly enough for our monthly expenses. What's going on? He shrugged, heading for the fridge. I thought we could tighten our belts a bit, save some money. Save money, I echoed. Since when have you been concerned about saving, and why now, right after taking out a huge loan from your parents? Richard's back stiffened. He turned to face me, his expression guarded. Look, Lucia, I told you not to worry about that loan. I've got everything under control. Do you? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, nothing about this seems under control. First the loan, now this. What aren't you telling me? He slammed the fridge door shut. For God's sake, Lucia, can't you just trust me? I'm handling our finances. That's my job. Your job? I felt my temper rising. I thought we were partners in this marriage. When did it become your job to make unilateral decisions about our money? Richard ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just money. Just money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Richard, money is what keeps a roof over our heads and food on our table. It's not just anything. He waved a dismissive hand. You're being hysterical. I've got everything under control. Now can we please just have dinner and forget about this? I stood there, stunned by his cavalier attitude. This wasn't the Richard I knew. The man I married would never dismiss my concerns like this. Fine, I said, my voice cold. Dinner's in the oven. I've lost my appetite. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Richard to serve himself. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard him muttering under his breath. Once in our room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. Something was seriously wrong. Richard's behavior, the secret loan, the measly $300 for expenses. None of it made sense. I pulled out my phone and texted Meredith. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I need your advice. Her response was immediate. Of course, everything okay? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Was everything okay? I didn't think so, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what was wrong. I don't know, I finally replied. I'll explain tomorrow. As I set my phone down, I heard Richard's footsteps on the stairs. I quickly wiped away the tears I hadn't realized were falling and steeled myself for another confrontation. But when he entered the room, he didn't say a word. He just grabbed his pajamas and headed for the bathroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of dread. Whatever was going on with Richard, I was determined to find out. And I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what I discovered. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as my mind raced with questions about Richard's behavior. By morning, I was exhausted but determined to get answers. While Richard was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages and emails. What I found made my blood run cold. Credit card bills, expensive restaurant receipts, hotel charges, all hidden from our joint account. I heard the shower turn off and quickly put the phone back. When Richard emerged, I was sitting on the bed, my face pale. Lucia, you okay? He asked, toweling his hair. I looked up at him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Richard, we need to talk about our finances, now. He sighed, dropping the towel. Not this again. I told you, I've got it under control. Really? I stood up, my anger rising. Then explain the credit card bills I found. The restaurants, the hotels. Where's all that money coming from, Richard? His face darkened. You went through my phone? What happened to trust? Trust? I laughed bitterly. You lost that right when you started hiding things from me. Now answer the question. Richard's jaw clenched. It's work-related, client meetings, business trips. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I challenged. He turned away, buttoning his shirt. I don't have time for this. I'm late for work. As he headed for the door, I called after him. If you walk out now, don't bother coming back tonight. He paused, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. Then, without a word, he left. I sank onto the bed, my head in my hands. How had we come to this? My phone buzzed, a reminder of my coffee date with Meredith. I grabbed my purse and headed out, desperate for a friendly face. Meredith was already at our usual spot, 2 steaming cups waiting. One look at my face and she knew something was wrong. Spill, she said, pushing a coffee towards me. I told her everything, the loan, the $300, the hidden expenses. Her eyes widened with each revelation. Lucia, she said gently when I finished, have you considered that Richard might be seeing someone else? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. No, I whispered. He wouldn't. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. The hotels, the expensive dinners, it all suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. What am I going to do? I asked, fighting back tears. Meredith squeezed my hand. First, we're going to get proof. Then we're going to make him pay. We spent the next few hours plotting. By the time I got home, I had a plan. I logged into our joint account, my heart sinking as I saw the balance. Most of our savings were gone. I checked our credit card statements next, finding charge after charge for things I'd never seen or known about. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a web of financial deceit that left me breathless. Richard had been living a double life, spending money we didn't have on God knows what or who. The front door opened, and Richard walked in. He looked tired, his tie loosened. Lucia, he started, about this morning. I cut him off. I know everything, Richard. The credit cards, the drained savings. How could you do this to us? He paled, stammering. I can explain. Save it, I snapped. I want the truth, all of it, now. Richard slumped into a chair, looking defeated. I made some bad investments. I thought I could fix it before you found out. And the hotels, the restaurants? I pressed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Business meetings, networking. I knew he was lying, but I couldn't prove it. Not yet. I want access to all our accounts, I demanded. No more secrets. Richard nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't pushed further. But as he headed upstairs, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen lighting up with a message. From someone named Stella. My heart raced. Who was Stella? And what else was Richard hiding? I had a feeling I was about to uncover something far worse than financial troubles. And I wasn't sure our marriage could survive it. The name Stella haunted me for days. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was more than just a business contact. Richard's secretive behavior and our dwindling finances painted a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. I was lost in these thoughts when the doorbell rang. A delivery man stood outside, holding a small package. "Delivery for Richard Thompson," he said cheerfully. I signed for it, my heart racing. The return address read Stella Jewelers, the same name from the message on Richard's phone. With trembling hands, I brought the package inside. I knew I shouldn't open it, but the weight of secrets and lies was crushing me. I had to know. I carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a velvet box. Inside was a stunning diamond necklace, far more extravagant than anything Richard had ever bought me. A small card fell out. "To my dearest Stella, happy anniversary. All my love, Richard." The room spun. I clutched the necklace, its cold diamonds biting into my palm. This was no business gift. This was proof of something far worse. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the necklace. The sound of Richard's key in the lock jolted me back to reality. I quickly shoved everything back into the box and hid it under a couch cushion. Richard walked in, his usual charming smile in place. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I stood up, my legs shaky. "Richard, we need to talk." His smile faltered. "What's wrong? Who's Stella?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. The color drained from his face. "What?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, pulling out the package. "Explain this." Richard's eyes widened as he saw the jewelry box. He reached for it, but I snatched it away. "Lucia, it's not what you think," he stammered. "Really? Because I think you're having an affair. I think you've been lying to me about everything, the money, the loans, all of it." Richard's demeanor changed. His shoulders straightened and a cold look entered his eyes. "You had no right to open that. It's none of your business." His words hit me like a slap. "None of my business? I'm your wife." He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "My wife? Is that what you think you are? You're just a convenience, Lucia, someone to keep the house clean and look good at company parties." I staggered back, shocked by his cruelty. How long?" "Long enough," he sneered. "Stella understands me in ways you never could. She doesn't nag about money or snoop through my things." Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "So all of this, our marriage, our life together, it's been a lie?" Richard shrugged, reaching for the necklace. "It is what it is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans tonight." As he turned to leave, something snapped inside me. Years of love, trust, and shared dreams crumbled in an instant. In their place, a fierce anger rose. "You're not going anywhere," I said, my voice low and dangerous. He turned back, eyebrow raised. "Excuse me?" I stood tall, meeting his gaze. "You heard me. You're not leaving this house until we sort this out. All of it, the money, the affair, everything." Richard's face darkened. "You can't tell me what to do." "Watch me," I challenged. "I've got proof of your financial misdeeds, Richard. One call to the police and your perfect little world comes crashing down." Fear flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by anger. "You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone. "Try me." We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. I knew in that moment that everything had changed. The man I loved was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd betrayed me in every possible way. As I dialed the first digit, I realized there was no going back. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever, and I was ready for it. My finger hovered over the phone, Richard's face a mask of fury and fear. Just as I was about to press the final digit, Meredith's voice echoed in my head. "Don't do anything rash. We need proof." I lowered the phone, my heart pounding. "You have one chance to explain everything, Richard. One chance to save whatever's left of our marriage." He sneered, but I saw the relief in his eyes. "There's nothing to explain. You're overreacting as usual." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll find the truth myself." I stormed out of the house, leaving Richard standing there dumbfounded. I drove straight to Meredith's place, tears blurring my vision. Meredith opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "Oh, honey, what happened?" Between sobs, I told her everything: the necklace, Stella, Richard's cruel words. Meredith listened, her face growing darker with each revelation. "That bastard," she muttered. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find this Stella, and we're going to get proof of everything." For the next few hours, we played detective. Meredith, it turned out, had a knack for online sleuthing. We scoured social media, piecing together the puzzle of Richard's secret life. "Look at this," Meredith said, pointing to her laptop screen. It was a photo of Richard at a restaurant, his arm around a young blonde woman. The caption read, "Anniversary dinner with my love, 2 years strong." The date was from last month. 2 years. He'd been cheating on me for 2 years. "There's more," Meredith said gently. She pulled up financial records, showing large transfers from our joint account to an unknown recipient. "He's been funneling money to her," I whispered, the reality of his betrayal sinking in. Meredith squeezed my hand. "Lucia, I hate to say this, but I think it's time to talk to a lawyer." I nodded, numb. "You're right. This marriage is over." Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard. "Where are you? Come home. We need to talk." I showed Meredith the message. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't go alone. I'm coming with you." When we arrived at the house, Richard was pacing in the living room. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face when he saw Meredith. "What's she doing here?" he demanded. "She's here to support me," I said, my voice steady, "while you tear our life apart." Richard's face softened, a look I'd seen him use countless times to charm his way out of trouble. "Lucia, baby, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can work this out." I almost laughed. "Work it out? After 2 years of lies? After draining our accounts for your mistress?" His eyes widened. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter," I cut him off. "What matters is that it's over, Richard. I want a divorce." The charm vanished from his face, replaced by cold anger. "You'll regret this, Lucia. You're nothing without me." Meredith stepped forward, fire in her eyes. "Watch it, Richard. One more word and I'll show you just how much Lucia doesn't need you." Richard glared at us both, then stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto the couch, exhaustion washing over me. What do I do now? Meredith sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "Now we fight. We get you the best lawyer in town, and we make sure Richard pays for every lie, every betrayal." I nodded, a new determination rising within me. Richard thought I was nothing without him? I'd show him just how wrong he was. As I sat there planning my next move, I realized something. The pain of Richard's betrayal was still there, but alongside it was a growing sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. "Okay," I said, sitting up straighter. "Let's do this. It's time Richard learned that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Meredith grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. "That's my girl. Let's make him rue the day he ever messed with Lucia Thompson." As we began to plan, I knew the road ahead would be tough. But I was ready. Richard had underestimated me for the last time. Now it was my turn to show him and the world exactly what I was made of. The day of reckoning had arrived. Armed with a folder full of evidence and Meredith by my side, I marched into our house, ready for the final confrontation with Richard. He was in his study, lounging in his leather chair, as if he didn't have a care in the world. The sight of him, so nonchalant after everything he'd done, made my blood boil. "Richard," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, "we need to talk." He looked up, his eyes narrowing when he saw Meredith. "I thought I told you to come alone." "And I thought we had a faithful marriage," I shot back. "Looks like we were both wrong." I slammed the folder on his desk, spreading out bank statements, hotel receipts, and screenshots of his conversations with Stella. "Care to explain this?" I asked, watching the color drain from his face. Richard's eyes darted between the documents, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, his demeanor changed. He leaned back, a smug smile spreading across his face. "So what?" he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You caught me. Congratulations. What are you going to do about it?" His cavalier attitude stunned me. "What am I going to do? I'm divorcing you, Richard, and I'm taking everything." He laughed, a cold, cruel sound that sent shivers down my spine. Good luck with that, sweetheart. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get nothing. My heart sank. The prenup. How could I have forgotten? But then Meredith stepped forward, a fierce glint in her eye. Actually, Richard, she said, pulling out another document, that prenup becomes null and void in cases of infidelity, and we have more than enough proof of that. Richard's smug expression faltered. You're bluffing. Try us, I challenged. We've got statements from the private investigator, testimony from hotel staff, even a signed affidavit from Stella herself. At the mention of Stella's name, Richard's composure cracked. You talked to Stella? Oh, yes, Meredith chimed in. She was quite helpful once we explained how you've been siphoning company funds to finance your little affair. Turns out she's not too keen on being an accessory to embezzlement. Richard lunged for the phone, but I was quicker. I snatched it away, my heart pounding. It's over, Richard, I said. You've lost everything. The company knows about the embezzlement. Stella's gone. And now I'm leaving too. For a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Then, like a cornered animal, he lashed out. You think you can survive without me? He snarled. You're nothing, Lucia. Just a trophy wife who got lucky. Without me, you'll be back to being a nobody in no time. His words stung, but I stood my ground. I'd rather be a nobody with dignity than spend another second as your wife. I turned to leave, but Richard grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. You're not going anywhere, he growled. Suddenly, Meredith was there, her phone out. Let her go, Richard, or I start live streaming. I'm sure your company would love to see how you treat women. Richard released me, his face contorted with rage. This isn't over, he spat. Oh, but it is, I said, rubbing my arm. Goodbye, Richard. As we walked out, I heard the crash of something being thrown against the wall, but I didn't look back. My legs were shaky, and tears threatened to spill, but I held my head high. Outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air. It felt like my first real breath in years. You did it, Meredith said, squeezing my hand. You're free. I nodded, a mix of relief and fear washing over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine to choose. As we drove away, I realized this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my new life, and despite the pain and uncertainty, I was ready to embrace it. The keys to my new apartment felt heavy in my hand as I stood at the threshold. This small, one-bedroom space was a far cry from the luxurious house I'd shared with Richard, but it was mine. All mine. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, the weight of my new reality settling on my shoulders. Freedom tasted bittersweet. Home sweet home, I murmured to myself, setting down the last of my boxes. My phone buzzed. It was an email from my lawyer. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, but Richard was fighting tooth and nail for every penny. I sighed, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Just then, another email popped up. This one made my heart race. It was from my boss, requesting an urgent meeting. With trembling fingers, I dialed her number. Lucia, she said, her voice tense. We need to talk about your position at the company. My throat went dry. What about it? Richard has been making some claims. He's suggesting that you were complicit in his financial misdeeds. The room spun. That's a lie, I exclaimed. I had no idea what he was doing. I believe you, my boss said, but the board is concerned. We need to conduct an internal investigation. In the meantime, I knew what was coming before she said it. You're suspending me. With pay, she added quickly. But yes, I'm sorry, Lucia. I ended the call, my mind reeling. Richard had struck again, this time aiming for my career. The one thing I had left. I sank onto my new second-hand couch, fighting back tears. How much more could I lose? My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, I said warily. Is this Lucia Thompson? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's this? This is Stella. I nearly dropped the phone. Stella, Richard's ex-mistress, she finished. Listen, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to talk to you. It's about Richard. My heart pounded. What about him? He's not done with you, Lucia. He's planning something big, something that could ruin you completely. I felt the blood drain from my face. What do you mean? Meet me, Stella said urgently. I'll explain everything. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, my mind racing. What could Richard possibly have planned? Hadn't he taken enough from me already? As I grabbed my purse to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Meredith. "Lucia, turn on the news, now." I fumbled for the remote, flicking on the small TV in my new apartment. My jaw dropped as I saw Richard's face filling the screen. "Allegations against my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lucia Thompson," he was saying, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "It pains me to reveal this, but she was the mastermind behind the embezzlement scheme. I was merely a pawn in her elaborate fraud." I watched in horror as Richard spun a web of lies, painting me as a manipulative criminal who had used him for his money and connections. He even produced doctored documents and emails to support his claims. My phone was ringing off the hook now. My lawyer, my parents, even old college friends. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I was watching my life, my reputation, everything I'd worked for, crumble before my eyes. In that moment, standing alone in my small apartment, watching Richard destroy me on national television, I felt more alone and defeated than ever before. But beneath the shock and despair, a spark of determination flickered to life. Richard thought he'd won. He thought he'd broken me for good. But he'd underestimated me once before, and I wasn't about to let him do it again. With shaking hands, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I had a meeting with Stella to get to, and this time, I was going to fight back with everything I had. The game wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. I stood outside the courthouse, my heart pounding. This was it. The final showdown. Months of legal battles, sleepless nights, and relentless determination had led to this moment. As I walked in, I caught sight of Richard. He looked haggard, a far cry from the polished man I'd married. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. But then his gaze hardened, and I remembered why we were here. The courtroom was packed. I saw Meredith in the back, giving me a reassuring nod. And there, to my surprise, was Stella, looking nervous but determined. As the judge entered, a hush fell over the room. Richard's lawyer spoke first, weaving a tale of my supposed deceit and manipulation. I gripped the edge of my seat, willing myself to stay calm. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood, a stack of documents in hand. "Your Honor, we have evidence that will prove beyond doubt that Mr. Thompson, not Mrs. Thompson, was the sole perpetrator of these financial crimes." What followed was a meticulous unraveling of Richard's lies. Bank statements, witness testimonies, and, most damning of all, a series of emails between Richard and his co-conspirators, detailing every step of his embezzlement scheme. I watched Richard's face as the truth came to light. His cool facade crumbled, replaced by panic and then defeat. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Stella stood up, her voice shaky but clear. "Your Honor, I have something to add." She produced a USB drive. "This contains recordings of Mr. Thompson admitting to his crimes and planning to frame Mrs. Thompson. He thought I was asleep when he made these calls." Richard's face went ashen. "Stella, how could you?" He hissed. She met his gaze steadily. "Because it's the right thing to do." As the judge reviewed the new evidence, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The truth was finally out. The verdict came swiftly. Richard was found guilty on all counts. As the judge detailed his sentence, jail time, and hefty fines, I saw Richard's parents in the gallery, their faces a mix of shock and disappointment. Outside the courthouse, Richard's father approached me. "Lucia," he said, his voice heavy with regret, "we had no idea. We want to make this right." They offered to pay the settlement we'd agreed upon in the divorce to help undo some of the damage their son had caused. It wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a start. As I watched Richard being led away in handcuffs, a complex mix of emotions washed over me. Relief, sadness, and finally a sense of freedom. Meredith hugged me tightly. "It's over, Lucia. You did it." I nodded, tears in my eyes. "We did it." In the weeks that followed, life began to take on a new shape. My name was cleared, and I was reinstated at work with a promotion. The settlement from Richard's parents allowed me to start fresh, on my own terms. One sunny afternoon, as I was setting up my new home office, I found an old photo of Richard and me. We were smiling, blissfully unaware of what lay ahead. For a moment, I mourned for that innocent couple. But then I looked around at my new life, built with my own strength, surrounded by true friends, and full of possibilities. I realized that while the journey had been painful, it had led me to a place of authenticity and self-discovery I might never have found otherwise. I picked up the photo and, after a moment's hesitation, placed it in a drawer. It was part of my past, but it no longer defined my future. As I closed the drawer, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my new mentor at work, offering to grab coffee and discuss my ideas for our upcoming project. I smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. This was my life now, full of challenges, yes, but also full of opportunity and genuine connections. Time for a new chapter, I said to myself, grabbing my keys. As I stepped out into the sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it might lead. Richard had tried to break me, but in the end he'd only made me stronger, and that strength would carry me forward into whatever adventures lay ahead. I wiped the flour from my hands, inhaling the sweet aroma of freshly baked cookies wafting through my kitchen. The front door creaked open, and I turned to see Derek sauntering in, his trademark charming smile plastered across his face. "Hey, darling, smell those cookies, but I have something even sweeter for you," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I couldn't help but smile back, even as a flicker of unease passed through me. There was something off about his expression, a darkness lurking beneath the surface that I couldn't quite place. "Oh, and what might that be?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Derek reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat as he dropped to one knee. "Emma Rowland, will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop. This was everything I'd ever dreamed of, wasn't it? Yet that nagging feeling of doubt persisted. "Derek, I don't know what to say," I stammered. His smile faltered for a moment. "Say yes. Of course. We're perfect together, Emma. Think about it. The successful marketing exec and the talented baker. We'll be unstoppable." I hesitated, my hand unconsciously moving to rest on my slightly swollen belly. We'd only known each other for 6 months, and I was already 3 months pregnant. It all felt so fast. "What about the baby?" I asked softly. Derek's eyes hardened for a split second before his charm offensive kicked back in. "That's why this is perfect timing, sweetheart. We'll be a real family." I took a deep breath, pushing my doubts aside. "Yes, Derek. Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on my finger and pulled me into a kiss. It should have been magical, but something felt off. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. I was at my parents' house, discussing flower arrangements with my mother, when my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Sorry, babe. Late meeting. Don't wait up." I frowned, showing the message to my mom. "That's the 3rd time this week," I said. Mom patted my hand. "I'm sure he's just busy with work, dear. Planning a wedding and preparing for a baby is a lot of stress." I nodded, not entirely convinced. "I guess you're right." Later that evening, I was about to head home when I overheard my parents talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. "I don't like it, Marge," my father's gruff voice carried. "Something's not right with that Derek fellow." "Oh, Harold, you're just being overprotective," Mom replied. "Emma's a grown woman. She can make her own choices. But a shotgun wedding? And have you seen the way he looks at her sometimes? Like she's, I don't know, a prize he's won?" I backed away, my heart pounding. Was I making a terrible mistake? The day of the wedding arrived all too quickly. As I stood in the bridal suite, adjusting my veil, my best friend Lily burst in, her face pale. "Emma, I need to talk to you," she said urgently. "Lily, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." She wrung her hands nervously. I saw Derek outside. He was on the phone, arguing with someone." My stomach dropped. "What did you hear?" Lily hesitated. He said, "Don't worry, baby. Once we're married, I'll have access to her trust fund. Then we can be together." The room spun around me. I clutched the vanity for support, my mind reeling. "Emma?" Lily's voice sounded far away. "What do you want to do?" I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at the hopeful bride staring back at me. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make, one that would change the course of my life forever. "I need to talk to Derek," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Right now." I stared at the positive pregnancy test, a mix of joy and dread swirling in my stomach. Derek and I had been married for just 3 months, and already the cracks in our relationship were starting to show. I took a deep breath and headed downstairs to share the news. "Derek," I called out, entering the living room. He was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "What is it, Emma?" he asked, not bothering to look up. I swallowed hard. I'm pregnant. His head snapped up, eyes wide. For a moment I saw a flicker of, was it panic? But then his trademark smile spread across his face. That's wonderful, darling, he said, standing up to embrace me. But his hug felt stiff, forced. As the weeks passed, Derek's behavior became increasingly erratic. He'd come home late, reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't mine. When I'd confront him, he'd turn it around on me. You're being paranoid, Emma, he'd snap. This pregnancy is making you crazy. One night, I was folding laundry when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked, but something compelled me. The text message preview made my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Don't forget the champagne. R. My hands shook as I put the phone down. I heard the front door open and Derek's footsteps on the stairs. Hey, I'm heading out, he called. Work dinner. I met him in the hallway, my heart pounding. With R? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek's face hardened. You went through my phone? Who is she, Derek? He laughed, a cold, cruel sound that made me flinch. You're being ridiculous, Emma. R is a client. Nothing more. But I saw the lie in his eyes. Don't do this, I pleaded. We're having a baby. We can work this out. Derek's expression softened, but there was no warmth in it. He cupped my face in his hands. Oh, Emma. Sweet, naive Emma. Did you really think a baby would change anything? I recoiled as if I'd been slapped. What are you saying? He sighed, dropping his hands. I'm saying that this, he gestured between us, was never meant to last. You were convenient, Emma, a pretty little housewife to show off at company parties, but you're not enough. You've never been enough. Tears streamed down my face. But our vows. Our baby. Derek's laugh was hollow. Vows are just words, Emma. And as for the baby, he shrugged, well, I'm sure you'll make a wonderful single mother. With that, he turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there, shattered and alone. The next few days passed in a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I was curled up on the couch when the doorbell rang. It was Margaret, Derek's mother. Emma, dear, she said, pulling me into a hug. I came as soon as I heard. How are you holding up? I broke down in her arms, sobbing out the whole story. Margaret listened, her face growing darker with each word. That boy, she muttered. I raised him better than this. As we sat talking, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Emma, it's Rachel. We need to talk. Derek's been lying to both of us. I showed Margaret the message, my hands shaking. Oh, honey, Margaret said, squeezing my hand. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath, feeling a spark of determination ignite within me. I'm going to meet her, I said, and then I'm going to make Derek pay for what he's done to us. As I typed out a response to Rachel, I felt a shift inside me. The old Emma, sweet, trusting, naive, was gone. In her place was a woman scorned, a mother-to-be ready to fight for her future. Game on, Derek, I whispered to myself. You have no idea what's coming. I stood in the bustling cafe, my heart pounding as I scanned the room for Rachel. A petite blonde waved from a corner table, and I steeled myself as I approached. Emma? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, sliding into the seat across from her. Rachel, I presume? She looked nothing like I'd imagined. Young, yes, but with a vulnerability in her eyes that caught me off guard. I'm so sorry, Rachel blurted out. I had no idea Derek was married. He told me you two were separated. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. How long? I managed to ask. 6 months, she whispered. But last week I saw his wedding ring. When I confronted him, he laughed it off, said it didn't mean anything. Just anger flared inside me. That sounds like Derek. Rachel's eyes widened. There's more. I think he's been stealing from the company. I saw some suspicious transfers on his laptop. My mind raced. Could this be the leverage I needed? Our conversation was cut short by my phone ringing. It was the hospital. I was in labor. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. My water just broke. Rachel looked panicked. Do you need help? Should I call Derek? I shook my head. No, I'll be fine on my own. But as I rushed to the hospital, pain searing through me, I realized how alone I truly was. Hours passed in a blur of agony and fear. Where was Derek? I'd left messages, but he was nowhere to be found. As another contraction hit, I gripped my mother's hand. I can't do this, I sobbed. Mom stroked my hair. Yes, you can, Emma. You're stronger than you know. With one final push, my daughter entered the world. As I held her tiny form, a fierce love unlike anything I'd ever known washed over me. Hello, Ava, I whispered. It's just you and me now. It wasn't until hours later that Derek finally showed up, reeking of alcohol. "Where have you been?" I hissed, careful not to wake Ava. He shrugged, barely glancing at the baby. "Out. Had some things to take care of." "Things?" I echoed, disbelief turning to rage. "Your daughter was being born." Derek's eyes hardened. "Don't start, Emma. I'm here now, aren't I?" "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. He laughed. "You can't be serious." "I know about Rachel," I spat, "and the money you've been stealing. Get out before I call security." For a moment, fear flashed across Derek's face. Then his mask of indifference slipped back into place. "Fine," he sneered. "Have fun playing single mom. We both know you can't handle it." As he stormed out, I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. What had I done? The next few days were a haze of sleepless nights and tearful phone calls. My parents were a godsend, helping with Ava and offering words of encouragement. "You've got this, sweetheart," Dad said one evening, as I struggled to soothe a colicky Ava. One day at a time. A week after bringing Ava home, I received a text from Rachel. "Emma, I have proof of Derek's embezzlement. Meet me tomorrow?" As I typed my reply, a plan began to form in my mind. Derek had taken so much from me, my trust, my security, my dreams of a happy family. But I refused to let him take my future. I looked down at Ava, peacefully sleeping in her bassinet. "We're going to be okay, little one," I whispered. "Mommy's going to make sure of it." With newfound determination, I began to plot my revenge. Derek had no idea what was coming, but he was about to learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially when that woman is a mother protecting her child. The first few months of single motherhood were a blur of sleepless nights and tear-stained onesies. Ava was colicky, and I was a mess. But with each passing day, I found a strength I never knew I had. One particularly rough morning, as I rocked a wailing Ava, my mom appeared at my door with a casserole and a determined look. "Emma, honey," she said, taking Ava from my arms, "you need a break. Go take a shower, I've got this." I hesitated, but the allure of hot water and 5 minutes of peace was too tempting to resist. As I stood under the spray, I felt the weight of the past few months wash over me. I sobbed, letting out all the pain and frustration I'd been holding in. When I emerged, feeling somewhat human again, I found Mom in the kitchen, Ava peacefully sleeping in her arms. "How did you do that?" I asked, amazed. She smiled. "Years of practice, dear. Now sit down. We need to talk about your future." Over the next hour, we hatched a plan. I'd start a small baking business from home, allowing me to care for Ava while earning an income. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Weeks passed, and word of my baked goods spread through the neighborhood. I was exhausted but fulfilled, finally feeling like I was regaining control of my life. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, everything changed. I was elbow-deep in cookie dough when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Derek standing there, looking haggard but still infuriatingly handsome. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cold. He ran a hand through his hair. I need your help, Emma. I've lost everything. My job, my apartment. Rachel left me." I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, quickly followed by anger. "And that's my problem because I'm still Ava's father," he said, his eyes pleading. "I want to make things right, for her." I was about to slam the door in his face when Ava toddled into view. "Dada?" she said, her little face lighting up. My heart clenched. I couldn't deny her a relationship with her father, no matter how much I wanted to. "You can see her," I said finally, "but on my terms, and you need to get your life together first." Derek nodded eagerly. "I will, I promise. Thank you, Emma." As he left, I felt a mix of emotions churning inside me. Had I made the right decision? That night, as I was going through some old papers, I stumbled upon our joint bank statements. Something caught my eye. A series of large withdrawals made just before our separation. With growing horror, I realized Derek had emptied our savings account. Fury coursed through me. How dare he come here, playing the repentant father, when he'd stolen our daughter's future? I called my parents, my voice shaking with rage as I explained what I'd discovered. "Oh, sweetheart," Dad said, his voice grave. "You need to talk to a lawyer. This changes everything." The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to a highly recommended divorce attorney. The second was to Derek. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "And this time you're going to tell me the whole truth, or so help me, you'll never see Ava again." There was a long pause before Derek replied, his voice uncharacteristically small. Okay, Emma, you're right. It's time you knew everything. As I hung up, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it, the moment that would define our future. I looked at Ava, playing happily with her blocks, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. It's gonna be okay, baby girl, I whispered, more to myself than to her. Mommy's gonna make sure of it. With renewed determination, I began to prepare for the battle ahead. Derek had no idea what was coming, but I was ready. It was time to fight for the future Ava and I deserved. The aroma of freshly baked cinnamon rolls filled the air as I put the finishing touches on Ava's birthday cake. 5 years had passed since that fateful day when Derek walked out on us, and life had taken unexpected turns. Mommy, is it time yet? Ava's excited voice called from the living room. I smiled, my heart swelling with love. Almost, sweetie. Why don't you help Grandma set the table? As I watched Ava skip off, I marveled at how far we'd come. My little home bakery had flourished thanks to word of mouth and a loyal customer base. It wasn't always easy, but we were making it work. The doorbell rang, and I wiped my hands on my apron before answering. To my surprise, it wasn't a guest for Ava's party, but a smartly dressed woman I didn't recognize. Emma Rowland? She asked, her tone professional. I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. I'm Olivia Chen from Le Petit Gâteau. We've heard great things about your baking, and we'd like to offer you a position as our new pastry chef. My jaw dropped. Le Petit Gâteau was one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm flattered, I stammered. But I have a daughter to consider and my home business. Olivia smiled warmly. We understand. The position comes with flexible hours and a substantial salary increase. Why don't you come by tomorrow for a trial run? As she left, my mind was reeling. This could change everything for Ava and me. But could I really balance it all? The party was a whirlwind of laughter and sugar-fueled excitement. As I watched Ava blow out her candles, I made a silent wish for guidance. The next day, I dropped Ava off at school and headed to Le Petit Gâteau, my stomach in knots. The kitchen was a hive of activity, and I threw myself into the work, losing track of time as I created delicate pastries and intricate desserts. It wasn't until I glanced at the clock that I realized with horror that I was late picking up Ava. I rushed out, apologizing profusely to the head chef. When I arrived at the school, Ava was sitting alone on the steps, her little face tear-stained. I'm so sorry, baby, I said, pulling her into a hug. Mommy lost track of time. Ava's lower lip trembled. You forgot about me? Her words pierced my heart. Never, sweetheart. I could never forget about you. As we drove home, I wrestled with my decision. The job was amazing, but at what cost? Just as we pulled into our driveway, my phone rang. It was Olivia, offering me the position. We were impressed with your work today, she said. We'd love to have you join our team. I took a deep breath, about to decline, when Ava spoke up from the back seat. Mommy, did you make yummy cakes today? I smiled at her through the rearview mirror. I did, sweetie. How would you feel if Mommy made cakes at a fancy restaurant sometimes? Ava's eyes lit up. Can I come and taste them? Suddenly, I saw a way forward. Olivia, I said into the phone, I'd love to accept, but I need to discuss some terms about my schedule. After hanging up, I turned to Ava. How about we celebrate with some ice cream? As we sat at the kitchen table, enjoying our sundaes, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We could make this work. I could have my career and be there for Ava. But just as I was basking in this moment of triumph, a familiar face caught my eye through the window. Derek was walking up our driveway, looking as handsome and charming as ever. My blood ran cold. What was he doing here? And why now, when everything was finally falling into place? As the doorbell rang, I knew I had to make a decision. Face Derek and potentially disrupt the life we'd built, or pretend we weren't home and keep him out of our lives for good. Ava looked at me, curiosity in her eyes. Mommy, who's that man? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. That, sweetheart, is your father, and it's time we had a long overdue conversation. The aroma of roast turkey filled Margaret's house as I put the finishing touches on my pumpkin pie. Thanksgiving had always been a big deal in the Rowland family, but this year felt different. Tension hung in the air like a thick fog, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Emma, dear, Could you help me with these plates? Margaret called from the dining room. As I arranged the china, I caught sight of Derek through the window, pulling up in his flashy sports car. My stomach churned. It had been months since I'd last seen him, and the memory of our encounter at Le Petit Gâteau still burned. "Grandma, look, Daddy's here!" Ava squealed, running to the door. I exchanged a glance with Margaret, whose lips were pressed into a thin line. She knew as well as I did that Derek's presence would complicate things. The moment Derek walked in, the atmosphere shifted. He scooped Ava up, showering her with kisses and presents, while barely acknowledging me or his mother. As we gathered around the table, I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us. Margaret cleared her throat, her voice strained as she asked us to join hands for grace. That's when I saw a flash of red on Derek's collar. Lipstick. My heart raced as I remembered Rachel, the young woman I'd seen him with at the restaurant. Throughout the meal, Derek regaled everyone with tales of his business successes, carefully omitting any mention of his personal life. But I couldn't stay silent any longer. The truth was clawing its way up my throat, demanding to be heard. "So, Derek," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "how's Rachel doing these days?" The table fell silent. Derek's fork clattered against his plate. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but the panic in his eyes told a different story. "Oh, I think you do," I pressed on, fueled by years of pent-up anger. "I saw you with her at Le Petit Gâteau. You looked quite cozy." Margaret gasped, her eyes darting between Derek and me. "Son, what is she talking about?" And just like that, the dam broke. Words poured out of me, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of heartache Derek had caused over the years. I told them about the affair, the stolen money, the broken promises. Derek's face contorted with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "I've always provided for Ava." "Provided?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the child support checks that bounce half the time? Or the promises to show up that you never keep?" Margaret's face had gone pale. "Derek, is this true? Have you been lying to all of us?" For a moment I saw a flicker of shame cross Derek's face, but it was quickly replaced by his usual charm offensive. "Mom, you know me," he said, reaching for Margaret's hand. "Emma's just bitter. She's always been jealous of my success." But Margaret pulled away, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and disappointment. "I think I'm finally seeing you clearly for the first time, Derek, and I don't like what I see." The room erupted into chaos. Derek yelled, Margaret cried, and Ava, confused and frightened, clung to my leg. In the midst of it all, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was finally out. As Derek stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I turned to Margaret. Her face was streaked with tears, but there was a resolve in her eyes that I'd never seen before. "Emma," she said, taking my hand, "I owe you an apology, and I think it's time we had a long talk about how we're going to make things right." In that moment, looking at Margaret's determined face and feeling Ava's small hand in mine, I realized that this was far from over. The real battle was just beginning, and I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The weeks following Thanksgiving were a whirlwind. With Margaret's unwavering support and my parents rallying around me, I felt stronger than ever. But I knew Derek wouldn't go down without a fight. I was in the bakery, up to my elbows in bread dough, when my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "Emma, we need to talk. It's about Derek." My heart raced as I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. When I arrived, Rachel looked a mess, her eyes red-rimmed, her usually perfect hair disheveled. "He's been lying to me," she blurted out. "To everyone. I found documents. Emma, he's been embezzling from his company, and there's more." As Rachel spilled Derek's secrets, my mind reeled. The affairs, the stolen money, the web of lies, it was worse than I'd imagined. "I'm so sorry," Rachel sobbed. "I had no idea about you and Ava. I'm leaving him." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "It's not your fault. Derek fooled us all." Armed with this new information, I felt a surge of determination. It was time to end Derek's games once and for all. But Derek had one last card to play. The next morning, as I opened the bakery, he was waiting for me. "Emma," he said, his voice honey-sweet, "we need to talk." I steeled myself, letting him in. "Make it quick, Derek. I have work to do." I did. He paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "I've been thinking about us, about our family. I want to make things right." I laughed bitterly. "Right? After everything you've done? I know I've made mistakes, he pleaded. But I love you, Emma. I love Ava. Give me another chance. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with, but then I remembered Rachel's words, the years of lies and betrayal. No, Derek, I said firmly. It's too late for that. His face darkened. You don't want to do this, Emma. I can make things very difficult for you. Are you threatening me? I asked, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I'm just saying, it would be a shame if something happened to your little bakery, or if Ava found out what a vindictive bitch her mother really is. White-hot anger surged through me. Get out, I hissed. Now. As Derek turned to leave, a small voice piped up from the doorway. Mommy? Why is Daddy being mean? Ava stood there, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Derek's face paled. Sweetheart, it's not what you think, he stammered. But Ava backed away, tears welling in her eyes. You're a bad man, she whispered before running upstairs. Derek looked stricken. Emma, Save it, I snapped. You've done enough damage, but let me make one thing clear. If you ever threaten me or Ava again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are. As Derek slunk out, I sank to the floor, my body shaking with adrenaline and emotion. I'd stood up to him, but at what cost? How could I protect Ava from the fallout? My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Just heard from Derek. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? I was about to reply when I noticed something odd. The safe where I kept the bakery's cash was ajar. With trembling hands I opened it, my heart sinking as I realized the truth. It was empty. Every last dollar gone. In that moment, as I stared at the bare safe, Ava's sobs echoing from upstairs, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. How could I have been so blind? So trusting? But as I clenched my fists, a new resolve hardened within me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Derek had taken my money, threatened my daughter, and tried to manipulate me one last time. Now, it was my turn to fight back, and this time, I wouldn't stop until justice was served. The morning sun streamed through the bakery windows as I surveyed the empty shelves. Derek's theft had left me with nothing, but I refused to let it break me. I had one last card to play. Are you sure about this, Emma? Margaret asked, her voice laced with concern. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. It's time Derek faced the consequences of his actions. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number Rachel had given me. Hello? This is Emma Rowland. I have information about Derek Rowland's embezzlement scheme. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Police officers swarmed the bakery, taking statements and collecting evidence. As I watched Derek being led away in handcuffs, a mix of emotions washed over me. Relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope for the future. Weeks passed, and slowly, life began to take on a new rhythm. The community rallied around me, offering support and encouragement. Margaret, bless her heart, had set up a GoFundMe to help me rebuild the bakery. One particularly busy morning, as I juggled trays of fresh croissants, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see a tall, distinguished man with kind eyes. Emma Rowland? He asked, smiling warmly. I'm Robert Weinstein. I heard about your situation and I'd like to help. Robert, it turned out, was a successful restaurateur with a passion for mentoring up-and-coming bakers. Over coffee and my signature cinnamon rolls, we talked for hours about recipes, business strategies, and dreams for the future. As the weeks turned into months, Robert became more than just a mentor. His steady presence and unwavering support helped heal wounds I didn't even know I had. And Ava adored him, often begging him to tell her stories about his travels and culinary adventures. On the day of Derek's sentencing, I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding. As the judge read out his verdict, guilty on all counts, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was finally over. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my parents, Margaret, and Robert, I took a deep breath of fresh air. So what now? My mom asked, squeezing my hand. I smiled, looking at the faces of those who had stood by me through it all. Now, we build something beautiful. And that's exactly what we did. With Robert's guidance and the community's support, my little bakery blossomed into a thriving business. But more importantly, I blossomed too. 1 year to the day after Derek's arrest, I stood in my newly expanded kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a wedding cake. As I piped delicate sugar flowers, I caught sight of my reflection in the polished steel countertop. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and happier than I'd ever been. "Mommy, look!" Ava's excited voice pulled me from my reverie. She proudly held up a slightly lopsided cupcake, frosted in every color of the rainbow. "I made it all by myself." I scooped her up, planting a kiss on her flour-dusted cheek. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like you." Robert appeared in the doorway, his eyes twinkling. "I'd say you both inherited the baking gene," he chuckled, wrapping us in a warm embrace. As we stood there, flour-covered and laughing, I realized that this moment of pure joy and love was what I'd been fighting for all along. Derek had tried to break me, but instead he'd set me free. Free to find my strength, my voice, and a love that was real and true. I looked at Robert, at Ava, and at the life we were building together. "You know what?" I said, my heart full to bursting. "I think it's time for a celebration. Who wants to help me bake a new beginnings cake?" As Ava cheered and Robert rolled up his sleeves, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a place of love, strength, and endless possibilities. And for that, I was grateful. Life, I realized, was a lot like baking. Sometimes you had to endure the heat to create something truly sweet. And this was the sweetest victory of all.